Okie dokie. I should be doing it. I assume this is live. I can never tell for sure, but
we could be live.
We may be live. We may not be live.
If
somebody, oh, okay, it's coming through, and yeah,
is it? We're in the 21st century. This is amazing.
And yes, I can't do anything. So thanks for coming along, everybody, anybody. This is the second tape deck talk I'm doing, and I wanted to ask somebody who I wanted to ask somebody who I worked with as a writer. Sorry, I worked with as an artist. Because the first one was the other way around, and I've known Jeff a long time, and like Jeff is the reason I even have a career in mainstream comics. So
that's the way I see it too.
We both see it that way. Let's be real. But we can get into that. But yeah, we worked together on. I mean, it felt like it was maybe 2 years about between all the issues. On Thunderbolts, and there's a collection of the book out next month. It's like
omnibus.
An omnibus. It's like 40 something issues.
It's big because we were, as we'll get into, you, I, and Kev were the guinea pigs for the whole twice monthly shipping thing. So in a short amount of time, we made a ton of comic books.
Yeah, because I was looking up just how many, because I knew all the ones I did a lot, but there was Kev, and then there was who on my name's blanking on Dark Avengers. It was Neil.
Oh, Neil. Yeah.
What's the second name? Neil.
Edwards.
Neil Edwards.
Sorry, Neil. Well, I haven't seen him online in a while, and
that's true, actually. Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. It's guys with two first names, as their full names is always tough. But yeah, like it's well, I remember the reason I was on the book was because he needed a fill-in, but then not all of a sudden, but Marvel were starting to do this double shipping thing where they were putting out like 2 issues. Actually, sometimes even maybe was it like 20 issues a year or something? You'd have a better idea than I do.
It was something like that, and the way I remember it, and my memory's suspect, so argue in the comments if you will. But so you and I were chatting a lot at Heroes Con in Charlotte, and you were working on 28 Days Later, some zombie book. You were doing some zombie book.
Hey, they're not zombies, all right? I mean,
or whatever they are. They're the people who run around and go,
they're zombies. Yeah.
And so you were doing that in black and white, and considering what they were paying you, it looked great. And weren't giving you. So, and I was talking to Bill Roseman, the editor, and I was saying, it's like, if we got to give Kev a break or something, I could write. I was always very big on, I didn't want people just interchangeably coming in. I wanted the art shift to make sense for the story. And we'll get to that in a second, how when we came up with the Thunderbolts. So I was like, what if we do this special, the man thing, which, by the way, to back up even further, when they asked me to proceed with, after they brought me on to kind of wrap up the Diggle Ellis Thunderbolts run. It's like, I don't know, like Andy was brought on to wrap up Warren's stuff, and then I was brought on to wrap up Andy's stuff, because it was all about to shift from whatever the Osborne event was at the time.
It was a Heroic Age was when you came
on.
Yeah,
it was the whole coming Heroic Age, leaving whatever it was. And I had been working on Agents of Atlas. And anyway, so I was going to start with Kev. And I remember Bill Roseman calling saying, hey, guess what? I was just in a meeting, and we've got Man-Thing. And it wasn't like anything I had planned and all the notes I had written, like why Man-Thing would be in there. He just assumed I would, of course, like to have Man-Thing in the story. And of course, he was right.
He was right. Yeah, that's a very you to have Man-Thing for sure.
I love Man-Thing. And then I realized how like within that same afternoon, I realized, wait, this can get me away from something I hate about the book, which is that everyone has to pile in some kind of ship and fly around. And it's a lot of shoe leather that kills time. It takes up page space getting you around. And then I realized, like,
I've seen characters walk up like stairs, and it's a lot of stuff to happen that isn't particularly
I'm
really
using my Gabe Hardman language here. It's a bunch of shoe leather. So yeah, it's a lot of business that, like, in comics you don't have time for. You only have 20 pages. And then I realized I could use Man-Thing to open portals for everybody, and we could just get to the action really fast. And it seemed like something you would draw the hell out of, So at some point we kept going from come on, just get Declan on here, like do this, see what he's going to do, and went from a lot of hemming and hawing to instantly, all right, we're going to need Declan to draw this, and then to a long list of things that you already needed to do. And because they're Marvel, they just always assume you'll just say yes. And you did, but but they could at least pretend that that they don't have you over a barrel. And the one thing that you immediately got thrown into that I feel so terrible about was I thought I was trying to play to your strengths, and you did really good light and dark, contrast, shadow stuff, and I was like, oh. Well, in this story, I'll have the team attacked by we'll have a bunch of ninjas. And what I meant for it, the way I saw it progressing, is you doing a bunch of roughs, but then doing most of the real drawing in inks, because I knew you would be able to go faster that way and do this really impressive thing where we see a bunch of shadowy, dark figures. And then they came back with the note, it's like, it's Daredevil's the hand ninjas, so they all have to be wearing red. So suddenly it went from something you could have blasted through to you having to draw hundreds of villains all wearing distinct clothes. And I was like, oh God, that was not what I was shooting for with that.
Yeah, because as well, the hand, they had a specific design at that time where it wasn't just like the hoods and, nondescript. They had like helmets and horns, and they had like a certain, like, they were very specific, which I thought was a cool design, but but you're drawing 100 of them.
No, you didn't sleep for a couple of months there.
I know, but look, I mean, I was at the same time, I was like, this is my big chance, so I was all for it. I was just, and the first and previous ones of these I did, I was on to Danny Earls, who's an Irish artist, and we just did a book together it was an alien annual, and I had basically 2 armies of aliens fight each other. But I did the thing that you did for me, which was, it was on an ice planet. So it's just horizon.
That's how you do it.
Yeah, but what did he do? He went in and he did these like lush, like washes of the skies, and he went in, and I'm like, I was looking at it going, I was trying to throw you a bone here, you did for me.
I could have warned you years ago. You can't do an artist any favors. They will absolutely, every time you try to make things easy, they will find a way to make it a lot of work.
Yeah.
You've worked with me enough to know that I will often like put the third act all in fog or something. To try, because that's the part where an artist is passing out and they're so tired. They've drawn so much. They need a break. They need less characters. They need to not be in a city. That's why one of my favorites was, well, of course, the Man-Thing standalone story was great because it's you drawing swamps and aliens.
Yeah, it was fun. It's weird because, like, looking back at it now, I can see what you were doing. Like, at the time, I think I wanted to draw cities. I wanted to draw all the kind of stuff as a kid. You're like, oh, I want to do, X, Y, and Z. But I mean, you were coming at it from a far more practical angle of like, I know this will kill you slowly, so I'm going to help you. You don't know I'm helping you, but I am.
Yeah.
So like, I was a little frustrated that I wasn't getting through. But then I think there was one issue where we were in a city, and I realized how hard it was, like pretty fast.
Yeah, because I believe for a while you were staying in New York, right? You went.
At the time. Yeah, actually, when I did the first issue, leading up to it, I had taken a lot of reference because I was in New York for a good while. So that was amazing, actually. That's kind of the dream for an artist, to do Marvel book and like be able to take reference in New York. That was I couldn't have asked for a better start.
And then you realize like no one ever really draws New York. Like now, until maybe like John Paul Leon or somebody like came in and suddenly like, oh, that's recognizable Manhattan right there, you know.
Yeah, you remember you had a note in the script about and nobody ever puts in all the black trash bags on the street. And
yeah.
I mean, I've been to New York a lot of times since, and I always like I never
It's
not
a
noticed
mountain of trash bags.
Loads of them, yeah. I'd say the only other thing that's always in New York that nobody draws, and myself included, because it's way too much work, is scaffolding. You know, there's always some building being worked on, so it's always like scaffolding. So it's like pose, perspective. I'm like, I'm not drawing that. It's just, it's way too much work.
But now, like if you use Clip Studio, formerly Manga Studio, you know, they have the line tool, so you can do scaffolding really fast. It's kind of great. You can do a perspective build and then and like there, that's what it looks like. But yeah, everybody just gives you. And the other thing most people don't realize, this is mostly a speech to young artists who are just starting out. You never really see where the building meets the street. There's always something in the way. There's people in the way. There's boxes. There's cars. You know, you don't really have to. If you're drawing that line, you're showing us something that doesn't look right. Really,
it's a good point. It starts looking like a box when you do that. Like also, especially these days, everything's like a shop front. You know, like whatever's the bottom of the building is never matches what's on top. It's like it's always like the old version, and then some like ultra modern block. Lego thing, you know,
it's super ultra modern down below, and then there's water towers everywhere.
Yeah. Even now, I find it when I'm in New York, like I'm surprised to see water towers now. You know, like it's only if you're in a hotel and you look, I was like, oh, cool. You don't really see that so much in the street now. But that was, I remember that was a big. So like you already had like, make sure we draw this because nobody ever sees us. So that was already a cool thing for me. I was taking lots of reference, but I do want to say
the story so you put it in. That was good.
But I do want to say, like, because I don't know how you remember it, but like, so yeah, as you said, I was working on 28 Days Later, and I was on the Comics Twart blog, so I think it's probably how, you know, I knew how I got to know Chris Omni and Tom Fowler and stuff. So we had people, and we knew each other from Twitter. But you were very nice to me when I met you, and you had said, if you want, I could send your stuff to Marvel. And the story I tell people, because it's how I remember it, was I said, no, I don't want to put you out.
That does sound like you. That I trust that memory.
Yeah, because I remember you going, no, you're not being you're not being rude. I'm offering, and I push it even further with no, I don't want to put you out. I don't want to be an inconvenience. I think it was
the most Irish interaction possible.
I just can see I'm having an outer body experience looking at me going, shut up. But thankfully, I think it was Tom Fowler was there and he just said, shut up and just say
that spells it. If Tom Fowler told you to shut up, then that was exactly how it went down. And we would have been in Shelton's Heroes Aren't Hard to Find shop after the show was over.
Yeah. But that was it. So you were so nice to offer, and you know, I sent my stuff in, and I got the offer because it was, if I recall, Kev was drawing like an anniversary extra sized issue.
That's right.
Yeah, I needed a two issue fill in.
So it was like perfect time. Yeah.
And then I remember, I think you were like, you know, don't think you said like, what do you want to draw? But I think you were just asking what I was interested in. I was like, oh, Daredevil, if I get to draw Daredevil, and you wrote Daredevil into it, and then the editor made you take him out. Because I remember,
they're fighting all Daredevil villains. They're all in Daredevil's territory, and like Daredevil can't be there.
Also, actually, I don't think you wrote him into it. It was just like a visual of him, like some kind of montage image, you know. So it wasn't even literally him, which I could see might be a problem. But no, so I was denied straight away.
That's right, because at that point it was Daredevil's little crossover with everything going on. Yeah, and we opened in that story with Luke Cage being jumped by a ninja and everything. Yeah, I remember it now. Yeah,
well, it was an Iron Fist even, so I got to draw Iron Fist in the first issue.
Iron Fist. Yeah,
it's tough because like when you're a new artist, you just kind of want to do it all, and I can see from the writing point of view, like you need to just kind of build the book and the story, and you can't just be going for cameos every time. Although you did write Spider-Man in as a cameo one time, and I remember the editor saying, maybe not, because maybe why would Spider-Man be there? And your logic was like, it'd be cool to see Declan draw Spider-Man. Why not?
Yeah, that was
Yeah,
the entire. That's the entire reason anything needs to happen.
yeah.
Unfortunately, the way the editorial offices at the time they were broken up like fiefdoms, and you had to go in like with your little cup saying, "Can I borrow a Spider-Man for a panel or whatever?" And they'd just say no out hand without even listening to your story, and various things. Yeah, I always had a hard time getting my little guest stars to show up and everything. So
Yeah, was that tough? Because I mean, yeah, like Spider-Man was in the Avengers at the time, and Luke Cage was. So that mean, those things make sense. I mean, it's interesting.
Luke Cage means everybody should be able to drop by. In one part, but it was one of Kev's stories. We had them go to the prison yards, so Thor and Captain America and everybody gets to show up and everything. And it's like one of the rare times I get to have the rest of the Avengers in the comic. But also, the fact that you're using the villains always made it fun. You could have them do things they would never okay with the main heroes. So I'm not really complaining. I feel like I got to do better stories because of it.
Yeah, and even looking back now, I mean, you got to do the length of the run you got to do with Thunderbolts is insane. Like, no books are getting past 12 issues or 6 these days. I remember I heard a quote of Hickman saying, the cool thing about writing at Marvel is that you can tell long form stories. You don't need to worry. But that's,
if you're Jonathan,
well, true. But I mean, even like you got to do it. I know it was always you do. I think that the acts of cancellation was always a little kind of dangling over the book. But like in retrospect, you did get to do like 50-ish issues or whatever, which is nuts.
In a compressed time, and it was because of that. And the nice thing when it was Roseman still at that point before it turned to Tom Brennan, and he said like they'd like us to try doing the shipping twice monthly. You think you can do it? And to me, I was like, that was like, okay, but we've got to do it like this then. Let me keep 2 storylines going, Kev on one and DEC on the other. And then it makes perfect sense for the style shift. Frank Martin can be your common element besides me in coloring. And I'll get back to Frank in a second because that was interesting to me. And then instead of like, typically I would come up with a ton of ideas and I'd have to be constantly like politicking for them, trying to get them through. And then someone get shot down. Then none of my ideas got shot down. I could just go with every single thing that was coming to me. And, I kind of love that actually.
When you look at the run, like the weird places you got to go, you wouldn't get to do that on Avengers or what have you.
Yeah. And like, then I had a little room and time to do things specifically like for you, like, hey, we're somewhere in Ireland, we can set this story. And then, so the nice thing was you got to give me a little lesson, and then you took me there in real life later when I came over to visit, so I could see where you were drawing. That was a lot of fun. I loved being able to do things like that.
Yeah. We just have the script up there for I managed to track down the first issue, 2010, which is a million years ago. Wow. I just even like your note at the time. It's Thunderbolts versus like I always really liked with your scripts was that like it wasn't always necessarily writing to like you didn't really have notes to me, but they were fun to read.
I write for 2 people. I write for the artist and the editor. Because if you guys can't get in and I'm saying guys for anybody, if you can't get in the same headspace with me, it's just not going to happen, so like we all have to be on literally the same page. So that's who I think of when I'm writing it. I don't like this whole, some people I've heard will just write a thing and then they don't take any feedback, like, because often artists will come up with, hey, what if I do this kind of weird thing? And usually, like, I feel like if an artist is, if they're inspired to do something extra, let them do that. Just like zen your way through it. Don't say, no, we absolutely have to do this. I only push back if it's like, no, that's out of character or something.
Yeah. No, I think no, you're right. I mean, I think it's a subjective argument necessary, but like, if I think enthusiasm, it's so hard to do a book that or do a story that people are going to get excited about or into. And I think one of those things is if the artist is involved or feels like they're being, heard. I mean, no one ever listens to them, of course, but no, just kidding. But
you can tell. You can really tell.
Yeah, but you can see. I think you can see in the work, and if the work is better, then the comic is better. If the comic is better, it's just better overall. I was talking to Drew recently, because we're doing Drew Moss, who you just did a book Blighter together. So yeah, I'm working with him on something. I just said it's a bit of a boring question to go, what do you want to draw? But I was like, is there anything you're interested in? And he said, I'd like to do a sword fight at some stage. I'm like, I can totally do that.
Especially with what you guys are doing.
Yeah, so I mean, but I might not have thought. I mean, yeah, okay, the main guy's got a sword, admittedly, but I might not have thought of a sequence, or give, I'll make sure Drew is a sequence to have fun with that, because well, I certainly don't like it, when some writers will just go do whatever you want in this.
That's too vague. It doesn't give you any parameters.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fine for a page.
That's to me, that's the same thing as saying I don't care.
Yeah,
same. No, I feel like you've got to give them something to start with, and then give them the space to mold it.
It's easy to just go, you do it, which I don't want to do, but I know some people. It depends. I think some people really want to do it, so that's fine. But I think it is your job as the writer to, like you said, give them something, and if they want to change it, and that's fine.
Yeah, you'll just get something better. That's the way it always works out. I'm glad you're working with Drew. He's great. Are we still on? It got silent.
Yeah, no, I think we just dropped for a second, but yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I don't just go through the entire script, but like I said, I was curious. Why do you bold your panel descriptions?
Oh, it's just easier to separate what's dialogue and what's not. I don't like to use the, some people will use a screenplay format, and I don't do it. And yeah, it gives the letterer a whole 10-second extra step where they have to convert all of my text to caps. But they've got a key for that.
I mean, I think it's good from an artist's point of view, because just visually, it's a lot to read a script and go through it all. So even if just glossing over the script, I can see what's description, what's dialogue. I don't bold it myself, but I can see looking at it how easy it is to separate what I need to read and understand and what the dialogue's going to be. It's just a block of nondescript text where it's all formatted in one block.
Right.
I've seen some people do that. It's torture.
It is torture
from a drawing artist's point of view, because you're you've got to sift through all the words that matter.
Yeah, it's like a lot of people will go through with colored markers, and highlighter pens and do the things, and is the famous thing Dave Gibbons would do in Alan Moore's script, highlight the one little line in the giant paragraph he wrote to let him know what he really needs to draw in here. And I know, again, as I've said in the past, I know why Alan Moore, I have my theory of why he writes like that. One, he's a go long person. He can't, he tells stories, he tells them, it's like he's gonna talk your ear off, and it's a good time. But it's the whole scene.
Sorry, you talked over me there.
Oh, sorry. He's just trying to fill in things and make the world real for his collaborator. I tend to do it. I will often write a big fat chunk of text at the very beginning of a script, where I'm saying things like tone and what we're going for and what's the general vibe of the whole issue and things like that, and try to get some of those things in there. Like, hey, let's show a lot of nature or animals in this, because this kind of thematically connects. And then I don't have to give you extremely long panel descriptions that put you to sleep. And I don't want to. I want you to be able to read it fairly fast. I want a page to roughly adhere to a page in the script. The thing I've started doing recently that I should have been doing way back when you and I were working together I now put a little cast list at the beginning of the script saying everybody that's going to be in it. And
so with a team book, sure, that'll be that'll help.
Yeah, yes. And but all these things, like, so that people don't like, all right, I'm going to blow it all out on this one character, and then they find out a character they were really would have liked to spend time on hits them by page 17. I just say here's who's appearing, just like we're doing a play.
Okay.
And yeah, so I'm going to keep, if I don't forget, I'm going to keep doing that because I think it helps.
Well, I mean, as you're saying, your descriptions, like I always liked them because like, to be fair, I think I heard Alan Moore, like, with the famous scripts that have been online were ones for J.H. Williams III, and apparently that's what he wanted. And I think if there were other artists, he would do that less. So, I think somebody might have seen an Alan Moore script and made a huge, just guess that that's what he does for everybody. What I like about your scripts were that they were reasonably economical, isn't that? There's enough in there for me to get a sense of what everything was without getting bogged down in, all this needs to be there, that needs to be there, and all the kind of logistical stuff that can jam up your process. Whereas, like, I feel, if you give me enough to hook onto, I'll fill it in. And I mean, by the artist or whoever you're working with, it gives you then the opportunity to kind of fill something in that you wouldn't have done, but it gives them. It's like you give enough material to work with, and then they can do a little bit of a spin. That way, they always feel more involved, and they are more involved rather than dictating every single description and every single action. Can get really laborious being on the other side of the script.
Yeah, I sadly, I'm guilty of the one thing I tell every writer not to do. And I always say, don't call shots for the artist, and then mine's full of me calling shots.
Yeah, no,
I can't help it.
I worked with Cullen Bunn on Venom, and one time I was talking to him, and they just said, "Could you not put in over the shoulder?"
Oh no!
And he's like, "What do you mean?" It's like, "Could you not write in over the shoulder on the description? Because when you say over the shoulder, I can't help but think of that image." And and then you end up doing it all the time. And he was like, "I'm really sorry. I was only trying to, like, give you a suggestion to use," which I totally appreciate where he's coming from there, because you don't want to just let somebody just kind of hanging. But when you write something down, my brain sees it, and then I can't get out of that shot, and everything can't be an over the shoulder. I found myself writing over the shoulder on something recently. I'm like, no, it's okay, because I don't really do it that much. But in this case, it's fine. It's kind of knowing.
And you're an artist. You reasonably understand what's going to fit in a panel and why the camera needs to be where the story is, and all that. And that's what I tell myself when I end up doing it too. But I really think a lot of writers put it in because they feel like they don't look like they're, it's like, look busy, everyone. They feel like they're not doing their job if they don't do these little screen directions, even though they generally have no business doing them.
Sure, yeah. They're just trying to, like, help,
And you just got to ignore that. And I remember Matthew Clark would do that with scripts when he was in the studio before Helioscope was Periscope and back to whatever it was, Mercury. And he would often just do the reverse highlighter. He would just scratch out things like that. Like every time someone wrote over the shoulder, he'd block it out so he wouldn't have to think about it.
The only time I did that was there was a novelist I did a short story with. And it was like circular panel. And I just remember going, fuck you, man. Like, I'm not doing a circular panel because you think that's what it should be, or panel on left of page. I'm like, that's not your call, and it's the only script I ever went and took a Sharpie and just erased them. Because again, for the same reason, if I read it, it's going to go in my head and enrage me. It's the only time I ever had that reaction. But I think I know what it was. It's because it's a novelist and they don't think visually, so they're writing for comics, so they're trying to be visual, but you just end up tripping over yourself that way. No,
they don't think of and like people who write for live action, to them a page means a minute. It does, it's how long it plays out. So there's too much dialogue, and there's not a conclusive thing happening by the end of the page that made the page its own thing. And I always tell people, like, no, a page in a comic book is it's on, each panel progresses you through the story, and each page gets you somewhere you weren't the page before. You know, it depends. And it doesn't have to be like a whole character metamorphosis or anything, but it's the way of progressing. I'm big on like sometimes I was just doing this DC Christmas special that's about to start this week, I think. And sometimes I went back in and I actually did some of my roughs. I don't do it a whole lot, but I just wanted to establish, like, the artists were having a lot of fun with, like, oh, it's all the Justice League characters and everything and having big action pieces. Like, okay, but we're getting a little jumpy. Let's like set up the next panel by starting to have someone enter, or, you know, something that gets you through so that it doesn't seem like what people, when they try to do an AI comic, do. It's just a bunch of floating panels that are completely unrelated to each other, and it doesn't work you through a space at all. Now, this is weird because I don't even have this script anymore because it died on a computer.
Sure. I mean, I have a lot of stuff that's died on computers, but I managed to, I mean, I couldn't, there's some stuff I couldn't find, but I was able to find, well, with this script, I was able to find, how do you drop, here you go. I was able to find
there. That's what I always love when you thumbnail out the entire issue. I love seeing that.
I mean, I still do. It's weird looking.
I tell everybody to do, like, put in the balloons in your thumbnails, and
that was one thing.
And that way you don't get screwed, and you won't get people putting balloons down on your characters and blocking your art elements.
Well, it was nice to know, because you gave me that note when I handed the layout, so it was good to know that. And one really good compliment I got was from Joe Caramagna, who's the letterer on Thunderbolts. He emailed me saying, like, "Oh, your stuff's really easy to letter." You know, I was like, "Oh, that's probably because I put in the balloons." I remember I sent him the layouts, and he was like, "Oh, that makes sense." And it's nice to know you're good at something without realizing it, you know, rather than you're bad at something without realizing it. But I always try work the storytelling around the flow of, like, the dialogue, and it might be a problem I have, but you know, I'll do the backgrounds afterwards. Then I like the background of the scene will always be done last, around who the characters are they're talking, rather than building the room and placing characters in there and trying to force the dialogue around it. You know, technically, it's like, it's kind of a more slapdash way of doing it, but I feel like it always lets the dialogue flow, you know?
Yeah, this is why your compositions are so strong, because if you can read it at this size, then you know you've got a strong drawing. Like the thumbnail for page 2, where Luke's paused and he's looking at the big temple over there that I guess Daredevil has taken over, or what was going on in that storyline at the time. And it's just such a great facing this ominous thing. Or like when you look down at on page 6 and in panel 4, you're doing the thing there that, you know, I try to get across to people, like, okay, you don't always have to have the first speaker on the left, but if you're going to have a dialogue exchange, try to put some space between them.
Yeah, so he can read in between. Or
then you can just drop the balloons. Like with that, the person on the right can speak first, and then the other person. And you don't want to have, like, you don't want somebody generally saying more than 2 things. It's
yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, it helps that you. I mean, I've done this. You know, I think I did lettering on a indie book years ago, so that was a good. Like, I hated it. I hated the experience. I didn't like doing it, but it really did. But it taught me how to, like, make sure I was leaving room and everything. I do have a question for you. This is Tatiana, who actually she flats all my pages for me. But she said, "Does Jeff put information in the script for the colors as well, like time of day?" I recall you did that a lot, actually. I remember that being a big conversation at the time.
Yeah, Tatiana, I do, and I often, if I'm thinking of it, I will highlight the colorist note in a color, so they can't miss that there is a note for them there.
I do remember you leaving. I can't remember any now particular off the top of my head, but I do remember you having notes for Frank as well. Frank Martin, who was the colorist, the visual glue on the book. But I do remember you writing to him, even, like, you'd definitely have notes for him.
Yeah, I like
not like do this, but like suggestive stuff, or
Well,
are you cautious, not cautious, sorry, conscious of what he'd have to do in the scene? I do remember that.
yeah, because one, colorists, they want to keep a scene in the same color scheme. Because it's just better storytelling. So I would try to work with that. Like Tatiana's like clearly concerned with the time of day, and yes, put the time of day in there. You need that, and or if it's rainy, make sure it's like this is a gloomy day. Yeah, I finished my tea and now I can't think. Oh, good. But yeah, the color is like it's so important. And I remember Frank Martin, like he had at that part was in a real kind of synced up with Kev. And then, your art comes in and it's very different from Kev's to me. And I feel like it took him a couple of issues, but he kind of cracked the case and figured out how he could work with you. And it's not necessarily the way you color yourself now or anything, but it looked really good.
Yeah, I didn't. I like how would I put it? I didn't really like it at first because it was. I mean, it was how he I love how he colored Kev, and he did the same thing with me, which of course is what he's going to do. Because, to be fair, I was just a fill-in for a story. Like I think because it wasn't until afterwards. I mean, you know this. I wouldn't know for sure, but I felt like I did the 2 issues. Remember, I did a Crossbones one shot, but then it seemed like the double shipping thing happened, and because I had just been on, it made sense. But I don't think double shipping was probably a conversation even when I came on for the fill-in. So to be fair, I was just a fill-in. Frank's going to color the way he's going to color it.
Well, that's because you didn't know. It was a conversation.
Oh, is it okay?
Yeah, and I knew they were talking about it, and that's why I tried to get ahead of it and say, okay, can we just make Declan the other artist then? Because then I can keep everybody busy. We don't have to keep running artists together. Like, here, see what this guy did. The kind of stuff that leads.
Yeah, you'd see, like it was there. You'd seen it, so you could go. We can just do more of this rather than taking a risk on a newer.
Yeah, and then that's when it gave me the idea. Like, oh, I can have this whole team, the Thunderbolts, with Hyde and everybody in it, and they can go off on their own storyline. And then Declan doesn't have to concern himself with whatever Kev's doing or whatever we're doing in the other part of the story.
Which admittedly I did, because Kev's incredible, and every time, like I will say what I loved was you were able to kind of do these mini arcs where I was doing 3 issues and he was doing 3 issues, and readers of the book, because when I started on the book, somebody said like, "Oh yeah, I was a big fan of Kev, and I didn't really like your stuff at first." And
Thank you.
I was like, "Oh, thanks very much." But then I was like, "Can I ask why you like it now?" And they were like, "Oh, I think I just got used to it."
I was hoping for something better than that.
Yeah, I was hoping for something better too. But I get it sometimes too, because when you're on a book, people like they get used to your work, and then they read a kind of like a familiarity between the characters and who you're working on. So I think having 3 issues in a row of its own contained story was actually very helpful for me, because people were you're not seeing. I was the fill-in guy, but you made me feel like I was the co-artist, because I wasn't getting the secondary storylines. I was getting a storyline, and Kev was too, and that was great. I feel like there was a good flow there. I mean, I'm sure it must have been really tough for you to be writing scripts so far ahead of time, or act 2 of each story. It was
a little weird, because I did have to like sometimes stop, go ahead and like, Declan's catching up, and then I would like start and write yours.
That doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah,
I'm not catching up with anybody.
I didn't want you waiting around. I don't want any. In my mind, people don't get it. It's like people have mortgages, they have kids, they have bills to pay. You can't leave an artist waiting. If you're doing that, you're a bad person, and you're not doing this job right. So you've got to get ahead and make sure that everybody's got plenty. Even if you are it's not a great position, but even if you are feeding them a few pages at a time because you're maxed out, because for some reason, the companies will give everybody all the jobs, and then like, well, why is he getting behind? It's like, you have him writing 5 books. I
do remember somebody at Marvel.
Other talented people who could be working.
There was somebody at Marvel told me at one stage, they were told to stop offering me covers, and I was like, why? And they're like, because they want to keep you like getting this book in. I'm like, actually that is fair enough because I am falling behind because I'm doing too many covers. Like sometimes an artist will they'll take way too much on than they should be taking on, and like taking the eye off the ball. You know, at first I was like, how dare they? No, actually, yeah, that kind of makes sense.
It's too bad though, because I love your covers. You always come up with really cool
thanks.
ideas.
I mean, look, I'm not stuck for cover. Like, so I'm not. You know, I to be fair, I think I was taking on too much. And as a cover, you're always thinking, it's just going to take a day, but it really is 3 days. And you could actually draw 3 pages in 3 days. So it does.
Right.
It takes more time than you in your mind you let it, and so it can become a problem. But anyway, I want to show him. I actually was able to track down. I could only find the first 5 pencil pages from the issue, and I distinctly remember writing my name in the top corner because it was the very first page, and it was the Marvel paper.
Yeah.
And I was drawing it in my mum's house, like when I was a kid. That's where I read.
Oh, it all
like,
came together right there.
So I read Thunderbolts issue 1 in that room, you know, when I was a kid, and so it was so. Yeah, it was amazing just to write. I just remember writing my name. I'm like,
yeah,
I remember going, I did it.
Did it. I'm on the good Marvel paper, and I love when an artist does what you did here, like a nice big white horizontal space with everybody on the one end, and Walker is down there all by himself in his chair. It's like,
yeah, I do. I love pulling back on those. It's one thing I did a lot on Thunderbolts, which I don't do anymore because I don't really like it. But at the time I was kind of playing it, it was like, say, that's a very me page now, like the wide panels. It's a very me thing I did. But I remember I was doing more of those kind of satellite ones where one panel is slightly overlapping the other. Because I think it is a good superhero way of kind of, you know, making layouts a little bit more playful without like going crazy. Like I don't like panels that kind of cut through or take too much attention, pull too much attention away. But I was doing kind of overlappy stuff at the time. But I don't do.
The overlap there works, and even if you're not consciously thinking of it, it works timing wise. Like when you have a bunch of same shape and size panels, that's a rhythm being established, usually through a page, like bam, 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 that sort of thing. And this is flowing differently, and the little slightly overlapping panel there works perfectly with the conversation they're having, and then focusing between and her and Walker.
So I know what I was trying to do is I was trying to lead, you know, you have your team shot, and I'm going to lead you down to panel 3 and then down to panel 4, and like I'm always trying to, you know, like herd, I guess, the reader in a certain direction.
Yeah, we got the wide establishing shot of the raft up there, and then going down the hall, then focusing on 2 characters in particular, then him versus them, and you know, that's just good storytelling.
Well, when I say to people, which is weird looking back because I don't know if I was even thinking of it at the time, but like that first panel could have been a huge establishing shot. You know, it could have been a really cool shot of the raft. I remember Kev did a lot of really cool shots of the raft.
Well, which is probably why you didn't do it, because he's already done it at that point.
It's true enough. Although it'd be cool to draw, but I remember thinking, okay, this is page 1 of my first issue, and all the characters are in one room, so put them all in one space. That was the important panel to establish everybody first.
Right.
You know, the raft could basically be a silhouette, which actually was fine. Like I'm perfectly happy to draw like I do those shots all the time now, like especially if it's on the ocean, long horizon line thing on the end, done, you know.
And you got to think of you've got to think of the way the reader remembers what they read later. In their mind, they still saw a great big establishing shot. You know, like I'd look through like the way old 50s Frank Frazetta stories in EC and stuff. And in my mind, it was always, boy, he filled every panel with all this crazy detail. And then you go back and look at it, and it's like there's one panel with a lot of detail. And then the rest of them, a lot of times, they're just floating in white space and close-ups of heads and everything. But you're still holding that establishing shot in your head. And it's the way you remember it. Joe Kubert, same way. He'll like, I'd remember, oh, yeah, Tarzan standing on the edge of this magnificent cliff, overlooking this big city, blah, blah, blah. And then I'd look at it and it's like 12 lines, you know, like, and it's really small, but the way he would do the scale would make such an impression on me as a reader. I love this. This is a great movement with Luke literally trashing that ninja.
Well, again, panel 1, 2, 3, 4, where he grabs the bin, and then 5, it leads back to hitting him. Like, I'm always
yeah, you're always setting it up. It's great.
Yeah, I try to anyway, like, where I can. But also, I wouldn't be able to do that if the script didn't have that much room. You know what I mean? If you were directing me specific shots, then that would be really caging me in a way. Cage, that's going to come up a lot, isn't it? Or constraining me in a way where I wouldn't be able to come up with those shots. So I always really enjoyed those. I think there's only one more.
That's a good example of a page starting with something and then ending in a different situation.
Oh, yeah.
Like, if we just look at it, we look like, oh, Cage is seeing his old pal Iron Fist. And then it's like, as you start to progress, you realize Cage doesn't trust this. He doesn't really think that's Iron Fist. He clearly doesn't think that's Iron Fist, because now he's slammed a trash can and broken this guy's chest open.
And then you get to have the cool reveal.
And then finally we get to your all the little escape catwalks and everything.
That's the shot where you get to really. I remember walking around Hell's Kitchen just to get as many shots as I could. Did I have one more? Yeah, I remember.
Oh yeah,
I was trying to get as much city detail as I can in there, but I think the one thing I realized is, I think one thing I'm quite good at, which isn't necessarily like because of any talent or anything, but is being economical where I need to be. So, like, let me see. Okay, yeah, like I said, the first panel in the first page, it's fairly simple. There's some detail in that second one, there's detail in the third one, but like, sell a certain moment. Like, there's some moments you really need to sell, and then
that's the moment, him standing over the unconscious body, and it sells it completely. Also, during the action thing where he takes the one panel fight, like, I love that you curved the horizon line. Like,
oh yeah, I forgot it.
It's not literal. And it wouldn't have worked as well literal. The fact that you just curved the whole street to go with the circular flow of everything really
I wonder if I did that in, so I can actually look. Did I do that in the layouts? Because I might have just done that in the No, it's kind of in there in the layouts, actually. Yeah,
it's a little bit in there.
Yeah. Sometimes I'll notice. I'll kind of tweak things as I go. But what was it? I might as well switch to the inks here.
There we go.
Oh man, she's just putting in a lot of. I can't believe I did that wash effect in that. Oh sorry, I forgot. I was putting in halftones and stuff at the time. I was really trying to like look impressive.
You were.
Smacks of like, please keep hiring me.
Yeah, no, it looks great though. Like it all works completely in black and white. I wish the omnibus would show some of this stuff, but they won't.
Yeah, I mean, we won't find out till if we even get a copy. I've ordered one just to be safe.
Yeah.
But I know I will like that shot.
I love this worm's eye view of the guitar guy.
Yeah, but again, there's no background there because I just feel, there's a background in the first one. You don't need in the second one.
Right.
I think it's something we talked about years ago as well. Is that the people talk about like comics not having a budget, but the budget is time. So you can, and like that's what I said about like knowing when to be economical. Is like there's some moments where you really need to put it all in, and other moments where it's actually better just to leave it out. And it's, I just think I've had a fairly natural sense of that. I know some people who, for an artist friend of mine, he is incredible, and he just fills everything with detail, and it looks amazing. And I talked to him before about like if you didn't have a background here, and he was like, "You're right, that would look better. I just can't do it." Some people are just like compelled to like draw all the stuff,
right,
and then draw themselves into the fucking ground, by page 12 or whatever.
Yeah, I know you're talking about Mark Laming, so we'll just name him by name.
I actually wasn't, but like, I mean, there's no case in point. He draws everything, like everything.
Man, working with him and trying to get him to take it easy on himself is just, it can't happen. It like, I like when he and I were doing the whole Dynamite, the whole Mandrake, Flash Gordon, King's Watch series. I kept trying to come up with things like, okay, I'm going to make him not kill himself. No, you can't make him not do that.
No, that people are compelled to do it for sure. Yeah. Sorry, to Jenna saying it's interesting how my style's changed. It's weird. I find it hard to see the diff. I mean, I don't know. I just think my drawing's gotten better. And I'm probably. I remember actually I was talking to JP Leon like before he died, and well, obviously not after, but he'd noticed that I do less hard shadows, like black shadows and white, and because I started using grey washes more.
Right.
So I'd kind of be doing more mid values and black and white, but I hadn't really realized I'd done that because I look back at the Thunderbolt stuff now and I can clearly see like it's very, black and white, which then was kind of be weird because I switched to Frank's colors, like his colors are so like luminous and like rendered, but not like not like hi-fi colors or everything like that. But
it's not the way you color yourself, but it's beautiful. I mean,
it is. But I look at myself, how I color myself now, and I can see a little bit of it actually. Like because I think what happened by the time the book wrapped up, I think he'd adapted to going like to not render some stuff and render other stuff, and that really hit a balance for me. Like I felt like we'd really hit it then.
It's a rare thing. Like, I mean, colors have a thankless task. They're given the issue in the last week. And often, and I meant to say this to Tatiana before, often my brilliant color notes don't get passed along. It's like, they're just handed files. And it's like, well, yeah. And I remember back in the 90s when I was first starting to get work as an artist, I remember a lot of artists would write color notes down the side of the page because they were trying so hard for that color note to make it through. And it would still often get wiped out. Somebody would just cover it up or whatever. And it's like, so a lot of times when I find out who the colorist is, I just send them the script in a separate email. Like, here you go.
That's the thing is you can work around editorial in a way you couldn't years ago. In some ways it's good, some ways it's bad.
Look at that man thing; it's beautiful.
Well, how we colored it. I mean, I definitely had a wash effect in there, which I was really happy with. But I will say, when Kev like colored that, I was like, oh man, that's really really nice. Like, so I think if I was coloring it, or if I was able to color at the time, everything would have been very subdued color and very drab. But like, I think I definitely learned. Yeah,
everyone's too safe. I even see a lot of things now. I'm not going to name anything by name, but like I'll see stuff with very nice palettes that looks really good, but they do everything at the same value. And it's like, okay, my eye actually has a hard time distinguishing it because like everything's done at the same value. So it's a lot of good taste, but it's not necessarily best for the storytelling. It's not like sometimes like, you can have like a big crowd there, but they're not what's important. Drop them all in orange or whatever, like and focus on the foreground characters. And you got to depend on what's important. Like in the top panel of that one, obviously Man-Thing being revealed is important.
Yeah.
So he gets a good highlight on what little white space you left there and the glowing eyes. I do like the red panel, but that was also Man-Thing's. His color tell was always when he's transporting you, everything goes red.
It looks great. Like, but even like to be fair, it's not to be fair to Frank, as if he needs some defense, but like, there's more rendering happening in say the background panels than I would have liked necessarily. But you look at them, they're actually very subtle. Like, I think that's the thing is like I'd be more into Frank. I would be more into Frank. It was an adjustment for me at the time, but like again, I think it was just a sensibilities thing, and he read me more as we went along. I look at this now, and actually, there's a lot of stuff in there I like that maybe at the time I didn't, but I can, having colored myself now, I have more kind of appreciation for like letting things like when Luke's pulling the door off there, and that lighter tone, where the silhouette is strongest. It's really nice. He does it the same with the next panel too. That's like those decisions are really the ones that matter, It's weird. I haven't looked at these pages in 10 years probably.
Yeah, it's great to see him again.
But I was trying so hard. I can't remember the name of this colorist because Frank wasn't blue. It was like Fabio.
Oh yeah.
I can't remember now. So I should have looked it up before this. This is the top of my like organizational abilities here. I made PDFs of this beforehand. That's the best I could do. But and I did like I liked these at the time. They were more kind of dark and drab, but like it suited the scene. But going back, I definitely would like. I feel like Frank got the mood and also the kind of pop of a superhero book really, really well. You know.
Yeah, and it's like all gang it. Like you could have dropped these foreground characters into a monochrome kind of palette. Making them all distinguished like that actually makes it hard for you to figure out what you're supposed to be focusing on. Like,
if I was coloring that now,
make them all the same color and have the Thunderbolts be the only thing that's really rendered. You know,
it's weird because I was not thinking about color when I was drawing this stuff. You know, when I'm drawing, I was only thinking in black and white.
Yeah.
But I can see the lights are there to put a spotlight on the characters, even though I wasn't thinking in color. And I think, you know, not to be a jerk, but if I was coloring that, I probably would do what you're saying, whereas like have a lighter value in the middle where the Thunderbolts are, and then push because the ninjas are nondescript anyway. Like, I would maybe push them forward.
All you need to know is there's a lot of them,
and
they're surrounded. And
I'm not like.
But what we're talking
criticizing.
About, what we're talking about is color as design more than like color as literal color. Like this is literal local color, and it's very professional. But storytelling wise, really, if you just taken the same red and put it on all of them, skin and all, and the clothes, then we'd get it like, oh, they are completely surrounded by the hand.
I think I can't remember. No, this is the same color. Actually, I love what he did here with Moonstone. Like the color, I was very happy because with washes, I didn't know how they'd look, but that looks great. That first panel I loved.
It's tricky too. Not a lot of colorists love artists putting the washes in.
No, because it's a lot of K in there and it can get complicated. I mean, I get it, but I remember at the time, if I was being honest, I was trying to handcuff whoever was coloring me because I didn't know who was going to be. You're
trying to color-proof it. Everybody does that.
Yeah. So that's why I was putting in the halftones in there and the washes because at the very least I could do that much. So I mean, I knew maybe it was a dick move, but like I was very nervous about my first Marvel book. I wanted it to be the best it could be. So if I could just, like now I probably wouldn't do that wash. It would seem unnecessary, although it does look quite nice. So
I still like it anyway.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. I'm trying to think. Yeah, that's when Frank came back in. You'll notice it straight away.
Right.
Actually, sorry. Tatiana said that the name of the colors is in the script. No, actually, it's not. No, it was Frank Martin, but not. Frank was going to be the colorist, but then we needed. Or not. We needed. I didn't even know. That was the thing as well. I do remember I would give colorist notes, but I'd do it like a week or so later because I had no idea how fast the production would go. Where basically once the colors are in, it's going to the printer. Whereas I was like spending like 2 or 3 days going over everything and like maybe pop the eye here and but like because I had no idea. I was just starting out at Marvel. I had absolutely didn't have a clue what to do.
Yeah, look, Rachel was the assistant editor on the time.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. God, it's just so long ago. I do outside of this. I do have. I was pointing these out.
Here we go. This is my stuff right here. I love this.
Well, I mean, this was. I remember Frank couldn't do this, and I asked for Jordi Belair to color this.
Yeah.
And I remember, I think this was exactly what I liked, but I think it was actually very similar to what Frank did afterwards. Which is I think. Like, I don't know if Frank saw it or a response to it or anything, but like I can see like that glow and ghost is a very Frank thing.
Yeah, I assumed he saw what Jordi was doing and said, "Well, that works," and he's just going to do what works. He's kind of brilliant and extremely flexible in that way. So
a
lot of people only do what they do, but he's got several styles in him that we.
Well, I could have talked to him at the time, but like at the same time. I wasn't like it was you, Kev, and Frank on the book. I was coming in afterwards, so my approach was like I'm just gonna be happy, and I don't want to make it seem like I was unhappy with Frank. Actually, like I think what he did is he did amazing stuff on a completely new artist who didn't really deserve that much attention. But these days now I'd reach out and have a chat, but I wouldn't have presumed that I could reach out to the colorists like that, back in the day. So I was very, very lucky. But yeah, I just pointed these out because I remember when I felt like I hit my stride when the Thunderbolts came in, and maybe because I got to design some of the characters, and again, you did that thing which is great, where you give me loads of characters to draw, but then you put them in a cave or in the desert, like, oh, it's great. And I love drawing rocks anyway, so this stuff was great. But I do remember, like, aside from, it wasn't Franco colored this issue, but I remember feeling like I was hitting my superhero stride,
Yeah, and well, you do good rocks and caves too. So
I still draw. I think I just did 2 covers this month, and the rocks are backgrounds. Just because I love. Actually, Tatjana will know that more than anybody else, because like she flats so many rocks. But yeah, I love it.
Yeah, and I love this real over the top effect in the bottom panel back there.
Oh yeah, it's great.
That was nice.
But there's one thing actually you did in this issue which I really liked, which I do now, is you used like you suggested that these be 3 equally sized panels on the page, because it basically was a big action sequence with all the characters, and it could have been like big panel, small panel, but like you remember you specifically saying in the script that these should all be like 3 equally sized panels, all this action stuff. I think the beats are great because of it.
Yeah, I was probably not even unintentionally, I was probably modeling it on Darwin Cook's New Frontier.
Oh,
the way he would do these, and I just thought it would really work for that scene, to just keep the battle flowing at the same speed, so everything has the same impact, kind of.
No, I mean, you could
busting his nose back there. That was
yeah, that was great. Yeah, that was great fun.
That's comics.
Yeah, you could argue it should be more bombastic, X, Y, and Z, but no, I think because that happened in the book in loads of other places, and because there's so many characters as well, like it actually really helped, I think, focus a lot of the various bits of action,
Yeah. I forgot how great this scene is.
Yeah, no, I love this. I just felt like all the for me.
These are amazing compositions. Look at that. I love.
Oh, thanks, man.
Hyde out there on the peak or whatever, and then Troll holding up her.
Yeah, I really like that drawing of Troll. That just sometimes the drawing, it doesn't often come out exactly the way you think, but that one just came out so nice. And plus, as somebody who read Thunderbolts
just emerging from the black. I love that sort of thing.
But this storyline was great for me because, like, I was drawing, like, say, our Thunderbolts and like the Thunderbolts that I read as a kid.
Yeah.
So like I remember just feeling like I was having such fun with all this stuff.
It just looks so nice with this layout. I love like sorry. I'm going to do this again. The 3-panel layout it looks so.
And I'm going to steal it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Darwin.
Yeah. The guy did no wrong. He didn't have a hacky bone in his body. Everything he did was well thought.
I found just some random.
Here's the one you got all the praise for, where you go inside, isn't it? Isn't this?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So this scene was during the Fear Itself crossover, and you wrote a scene where Ghost goes into Juggernaut's brain, and you just asked me to draw the most insane thing I've ever been asked to draw, and I really tried to deliver. I still don't even know where it happened. Yeah, I think I told you my inspiration was I don't know if I did tell you this, I probably did. Do you know in The Simpsons there's a bit where there's no more Itchy and Scratchy cartoons?
Oh right, so it looked like an API cartoon from
it was something and Parasite, whatever it was like an Eastern European knockoff version of it.
Yeah.
I think that was my inspiration for this, was to just
it works too. It's like it became. And then, do you have the spread on there?
I do. Yeah. I was able to find out where is it at.
Yeah, it's like because I thought, okay, at this point we've seen the characters a zillion times. What if we showed them only as icons? And you nailed it. Look at this. And
no, it was really fun to abstract Ghost. Like, abstract Ghost was so much fun.
Yeah. And it got talked about a lot online at the time. I remember I was seeing it everywhere. And like, this is the weirdest sequence. And I think I was also, I was actually kind of taking up the challenge. David Brothers or somebody had been talking about, why doesn't anybody try this stuff like Ditko would do, where you'd go into a weird kind of environment where nothing, is like anything you've seen, and or specifically Kirby, who did it several times, and just really blew off the doors with a bizarre sort of storytelling. And
Worker and Parasite was the cartoon. Thanks, Gary.
Yeah, Worker and Parasite. I'll now call these the Worker and Parasite pages. Yeah, the big skull with the mouth light into it. It's got it all. And
those were so weird. And also like Frank's colors as well just really like nailed us, because I don't know what I would do with that.
I love the texture he put all along that long top spread panel.
Yeah.
A lot of colorists would have no idea what to do with this. To him, it's another big challenge that he's going to jump on. The guy's amazing.
Oh, and I think the only other, like, I was looking through, I was like sifting through all my emails to see what I could find, and there was also where was it? This, which I couldn't find the colors for, but like this is what I mean. Like there's fan service stuff, which I think always can be useless, terrible, but there's also stuff like this where, as a kid who grew up reading a lot of this stuff, just getting to draw all the characters in one shot was so cool. Like I spent a lot of time on this, even though it's fairly simple, like compositionally wise, it's just a circle and those figures. But those are the moments you feel like you're 12 years old again,
And that's the thing. I want to feel that way. I want you to feel that way. I want us all to like tie back into what made us want to keep doing. It made us want to go from reading to creating, and again, I don't give group shots just willy nilly. Like I want it to be purposeful and be a giant moment in the story. Like,
yeah, they're going to be around.
So for us, this is that big scene in Endgame when all the Avengers start popping out of Doctor Strange portals. It's like this is our version of it, and you really rose to the challenge here. It's amazing.
Oh, I mean, like it's I like all my moody atmospheric shots, but like at the same time, getting a draw, like even Hyde in that earlier page, drawing somebody punch somebody through a wall is the most satisfying thing to draw. I forget this, like as much as I am a pretentious moody jerk sometimes, it is nice to tap into that kind of that little vein in you that's like remembers the excitement of reading this stuff as a kid,
Yeah. Well,
I mean, you're always good for. I mean, your work is so ties into that. Like, so what I've always really enjoyed about like your writing was always feels like you remember the kid when you're writing.
Yeah, I just don't want to ever get to where I think, well, I got to get to the end of this issue or anything like that. I'm hyper aware of like I've got people's attention for a little bit here, and I want them to not think about whatever it else is they're doing or where they're sitting or anything. I want them to be sucked into this story and remember it and talk about it and enjoy it, or be affected in some way. Yeah, it's so fun. I love the Mount Rushmore things. I had forgotten about this.
Yeah, I forgot about so much of this stuff, man. It is a long time ago. Gary was asking, tied to the color question, how much of the emphasis goes to the letter and the dialogue, i.e. emboldening or underlying to match the tone or cadence you want the characters to have? I
always put in like bolds and italics, usually. A lot of times I'll make a letter or note. One I think I'm probably too fond of is like, say if a character's because considering we're talking about comics, if characters like dissolving or fading away, sometimes I like can we do the color? I'll even change the color of the what I'm typing in so that the letter starts fading out. So the letter gets the sense of what we're doing. Letterers have such a hard road to hoe here, because like a lot of times people don't give them enough to explain, and then sometimes people want everybody to have a different voice, and I can't stand that. That's when it turns into a ransom note. It's like you can't have like, well, this character speaks like a Norse god and this character speaks like that. And then like you get to a zillion different things like, okay, this is too much.
Yeah.
So besides the fact that you're probably killing the letterer, it's like, it's also extremely distracting on the page, you know, like have maybe one character that has a funny voice and let everybody else talk normally or something.
Or keep like, I think I'm doing it with Thunderbolts at the moment. Like I just wrote Alien, and that's very naturalistic. And with Thundercats, I'm going to lean more, not Shakespearean necessarily, but like having listened to the show, like they speak quite formally. So I'm not going to go hardcore, but keep in mind that's the cadence of the world necessarily. You know, I'm not going to have like somebody come up and go like, "Sup, man," in the middle of it. Like, although,
yeah, they're a Royal Shakespeare troupe. Who all look like cats.
Mumra will have a very I'll retcon Mumra's background, but I get what you mean.
A lot of times you can suggest the same thing simply with the balloon, and you don't have to mess with the font so much. You can make the balloon a color. You can simply give the balloon a faded back outline or something like that to get across the same thing. It's coloring. It's weird because coloring is kind of a art of subtlety a lot, even though people think of it as boom sound effects and stuff like that. And really though, you're supposed to not be thinking about the lettering too much because you're supposed to hear it, you know?
Yeah. Would you ever like suggest colors for things like sound effects and stuff?
I almost always, my general practice with sound effects is I write them in for the artist to see. And if there's Somni, he's just going to draw the sound effect himself. So
yeah,
you better make sure like you wanted that sound effect in there because he's going to put it in there because he won't let anybody else do it. And, and it's fine because he's going to do an amazing job. But a lot of times I'm literally just putting it in to let you know this is supposed to be a big noise that's more like a giant boom. And then a lot of times if the art is visually noisy enough, I take it back out. So the letterer never even saw that direction. And another big thing I do with a big sound effect is, you know, I'll ask for the transparent lettering. It's like, here, just put it in white and everything. So we get the bawam, but it doesn't block any of the art, you know, like I'm really picky about that sort of thing. You know, I try to rein it in and not give letterers too many notes. You know, I do see some letterers, you know, online talk about, you know, I get another round of notes. So I have to go back and change it. And that's like, I appreciate that. And it's why I do a lettering copy where I check against art before you get the file.
Yeah.
But also, do you not think we have to go back and redraw and rewrite things? Because we do, and no one paid us anything extra. Like, now I'm not arguing like suck it up. I think what that means is we should all be paid for our changes. But so far we're still working off the same rates we were getting almost 20 years ago. So I don't see it happening real soon. But
also, I mean, well, there's two sides to it. One edge you can go like, well, it's actually so much easier to make changes now, lettering wise. Like if this was happening 30 years ago, you'd have to get like another piece of paper and then paste it all. Like it's so in a way, like you're lucky. On the other hand, I do think some writers probably take like the piss because you can change it easily.
No, and they won't.
Lots of people do lots of changes,
and they won't give their notes until the PDF's already been made. And I just don't think that's fair.
Well, I mean, I don't know how, for like the way things have been working for me is I will do the lettering draft before it's lettered, and then there'll probably be like a few notes once I see the PDF, like little tweaks. There might be, you know, a point of emphasis or something I missed, or maybe I think what happens sometimes is an editor will suggest a sound effect, and I'll either go yes or no. Like it's like what I wouldn't do is lettering note and then like notes on PDF and then more notes on the PDF and more notes, because I think some writers like to rewrite stuff. I don't. I just like to make sure it's all kind of matching nicely, or you know, if the pacing's fine. But you're talking about small little tweaks or bumping up a line. But I do know some people like to just rewrite stuff, and I do think that it's taking the piss.
It's too much, and it's not fair to the letterer at all. The way you described it there, of like doing a lettering copy before they get to it, and then maybe doing a pass of changes. That seems to me reasonable. It's not too much. You're not just getting new ideas and then, no, let's change it because I can. And, that's kind of like a noob sort of thing to do. Like, oh, I have the power to make Declan draw. I have the power to make so-and-so letter, and moving their hand around, and you smack your hand when you're doing that.
Well, also, like, case in point, like, say how I said I like to do the storytelling around the script. If the writer starts totally redoing that stuff, then the way I've laid out everything won't necessarily match,
Yeah, it undoes what you were going for them to suddenly change it. I agree with you with try to fine tune it just so that it really feels like that was the exact right bit of dialogue or text.
I do find sometimes I'm looking over, I'm like, oh, that didn't really land the way I was hoping, and it's not because of the artist or the colorist. It's just
the way it is. It's just,
it was a line. It was a line in the script, and now it's there. It's like, that doesn't really seem. So you're talking about me changing a line, or I think maybe I'd say my one fault, which is totally on me when Alien, because you just wrap that up, is I could never get the swearing right. Because you can swear, you can say shit and other like swear words, but you can't say fuck. And
right.
you know the way you'll censor the F, it'll be like, symbol and at, and I could never get the order of the symbols right. So I feel like I haven't talked to Clayton, but I feel like I owe him an apology, because I'd always just put in ones, but I never went to find the consistent ones and get them right in the script. So that's my bad, because I'm not used to writing swear words in Marvel Comics, so it just threw me off completely.
And Clayton is brilliant, by the way. He's
my go-to. Him. I mean, I worked with Hassan Osman Allow on Time Before Time, so like he would be my other go-to. But I've worked with Clayton for so long, so I'll just ask for him. Like, I think it worked out. Alien, he was already on the book, so that was great.
You're never going to go wrong by bring Clayton onto a book. He's one I love. There's so many good ones. Ed Dukeshire I work with when I can. I think he does great stuff. But there's so many good ones. But yeah, I try to figure out a balance to. Also, it's almost the principle of sometimes you look at something and then something you had there that worked in the script just doesn't work anymore, and it annoys you every time you see it. And it's kind of like with the thing of like, put on your earrings and then shake your head, and the first thing you see, take it off. That kind of fashion advice. But it's like, if something's poking you in the eye, then it's like it's messing up the story, and you're wasting time thinking about it instead of what's important about the panel or the page. So yeah, you got to take it.
You're thinking there. You were saying there, it's not the time for new ideas when you're doing the lettering pass on. And yeah, it's like it's the time to, like, you haven't looked at the draft in a while, so things are clearer. Like, actually, it's a problem I have with even writing newsletters and emails and interviews and stuff, is text I've looked at text so many times, I just can't see it anymore. So when I see the PDF, I'll catch things definitely more easily. But yeah, you're right. It's not the time for new ideas. It's the time to maybe clean up your lines a little bit or sharpen them a little bit. Like, new ideas. That was 5 months ago.
Yeah, exactly. That was many moons ago, and we're past that. And sorry, you got to get back into your headspace and figure out what you were trying to say back then.
I would say I don't want to keep you all night, man. So if anybody has any questions, for
me it's daytime, so I'm on the west coast of America, so
that's when I'll just waste away here. But I do. If anybody has questions, please ask them.
Yeah, come on, give us some questions.
Get them in. Yeah, there was.
We'll pretend we remember. Come on.
Yeah, I would say I saw come from here. From Chris, stuff you haven't seen in many years. Seeing these pages like going through a time machine, it is actually. I remember meeting Declan for a signing and remarking how glad I was to see Iron Fist and Deck saying quietly, "I wish it was their level."
Yeah, you remember that very well, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember, but that seems very.
Chris's memory is right.
Yeah.
You did wish that was Daredevil.
Tango versus that. Sadly, the mayors replaced the iconic trash bag piles with bins. I was there in October, and I still remember seeing a lot of trash bags. They're immortal, you know. They're not going anywhere.
Those trash bags, they'll save you in a car wreck. You know, you can drive into them.
But what was it? Yeah. So yeah, there's time for questions there. But so yeah. Oh yeah. Actually, I was curious about that. So you knew that you knew double shipping was happened, and you basically tried to get ahead of it. So
yeah,
I do think that happens a lot, and it's not a slight at Marvel or editors or anything, but like because they're just trying to get the books in. But I think it probably does help you to think ahead rather than being lumped with like last minute options or risk of that.
It's like the way it's like you can certain things you can see the train coming down the track and you realize at the frequency pages have been coming in, this artist may not be on target for making the deadline. So then you'll suddenly see me think, guess who's got a backup story in their comic? And and that's backup stories are great because one, like you can cut an artist off at page 14 or whatever, and they can, you know, have 2 days to sleep for a change, and then maybe somebody else gets a little tryout, and it doesn't seem weird to have a different artist, you know. And I wish backups. Well, I wish the big companies would do more backups, because again, it would keep schedules coming. You wouldn't be just running artists down to death.
It's a good way to try out new talent as well.
It's a perfect way to try out new talent. And then on that note, I wish they would do more anthologies, because anthologies are never a moneymaker, but they're forever throwing somebody in on a big series who hasn't really done that much comics. And then you watch them burn out in real time. Or they just suddenly like they can't keep up with that manic schedule, and it's like, yeah, because they didn't build up to it in anything. Like, give somebody a bunch of 8 pages.
I'd say maybe 7 or so years ago, I feel like there was a lot of like new talent hired who are like really hot and cool on Tumblr, who were doing really nice illustrations, and then they got books, and none of them had drawn. Not none of them, sorry, but a few of them hadn't drawn 10 pages,
20 pages,
that many. Yeah, or like even total, you know, and that, like, I think there was a big push to like hire, you know, different people from different backgrounds and stuff, but like they were all kids. And I mean, by the time I worked at Marvel, I had drawn like 2 graphic novels and like a year and a book. Like you do your time in the trenches. You start doing things and you hit walls and you realize you can't do this much work, and then you fall back and then you kind of come back. Like you want that to happen when you're in the, I don't know, spurs.
When no one sees you, yeah.
Exactly. I do remember when I came to New York for a while, and I was starting on Thunderbolts. Somebody had said to me that I came at the right time, that my work was fully formed, whereas they made the point that they came to New York when they were starting out, so editors remembered his stuff from 10 years ago and didn't look at his stuff now, which is interesting. Like, you know, you forget that, like, especially with new talent, they need to kind of learn, they need to be able to fail and then figure things out and then be ready. And a lot of things, I think, got a spotlight on them when they weren't ready, and it ultimately really hurt them. And like things, like you said, short stories and all that. But even I remember when I was starting sorry, I'm all over the place here, but when I started out at Marvel, it was all double shipping. So you just needed people. There were no miniseries. There were no anthologies. Like, it was all, the entire industry was built for that. Now there's so many different miniseries, and there's no ongoings. You know, like, I think there should be a balance there. You know, like,
probably. I don't know why it has to be all or nothing. Yeah, I remember at the time you and I talked about, like, I used to love miniseries. Like, some of my favorite work was an artist who you knew couldn't do a whole year sustained, but they could totally bring that energy for 4 issues, and then so that's what you would get, and you'd get this amazing thing. It's like that's what it should be for, and not the only option. There's.
Well, like, I wouldn't as an artist really want to do a double shipping book again, because I felt like, especially at the time, if everything felt very writer centric, and, you know, artists are just kind of being rotated around. But the way it worked on Thunderbolts, like, it did, like I said, it felt like I felt like a filling guy, but then I started feeling like more of the team, and especially because you were writing for me. And actually, I did want to ask something. At one stage, remember you said to me that, or no, I think I read an interview. You said that you wrote stuff for Kev, like monsters, because you knew that's what he'd like really excel at, and you wrote emotional stuff for me. I'm curious when, or if you may even remember that, but I remember it stuck out to me because, as the artist, like you don't know if you're doing a good job, and you don't know if anyone's really happy. And when I read that, I just remember thinking like, oh, that's cool. I do like drawing emotional stuff. Like it's weird, you find out things about your work from other people sometimes more than yourself. And I realized I was like, oh yeah, I do. And then I think when we were doing the Fixer end in that big arc of Thunderbolts, I remember like, yeah, that was totally the right one for me because I do lean that way, and it was interesting. I guess I'm curious how you viewed my work, as we were working together, because I never really asked, and I might have been too insecure to ask at the time, but I think it's something you can learn from.
Well, yeah, I could see the way you would do very subtle but very purposeful expressions on characters. You concerned yourself with the acting quite a bit, and so it was pretty easy choice there. I was like, oh, well, why don't I have some of these parts of the story happen in Declan's section or whatever, because like he's primed for this. Yeah, I do try to play to people's strengths. Going back to when you were talking about with Drew Moss asking what he likes to draw, and a lot of times when you ask artists that, they'll just say, "Oh, everything." They don't want to be in any trouble. I find you get there quicker if you ask them what they don't like to draw.
That's good. Actually, I think that's very helpful.
Suddenly, here comes a list. The one time I actually got the things I like to draw from somebody was actually Kevin Nolan, when he and I worked on the X-Men First Class short anthology stories, and it's actually included in his the Marvel art of Kevin Nolan. So he sent me a free book.
I have it there, so I'm gonna go find it.
Oh, it's so good. It's so fascinating to look at his pages at the exact page size, and see how he spaced things and designed. I love it. But I remember I was writing with him, and I said, well, if you want to tell me things I don't want to stereotype you and have you drawing things that you are sick of drawing. And if you have anything you want to tell me that stuff you like to draw, like I can probably try to get it in there. And he sent me a list of items.
Really?
He said a whole long list of things he likes to draw that he's not gotten to draw in a comic book. So I set that story in an old curio shop so that I had a chance to put all these odd things in there, because he does like to draw things like tractors and whatever.
Yeah, he draws them so well. Like,
well, and nobody else would I give. Like, here's the big splash page to open the story. It's a Queen Anne style Victorian house. I wouldn't give that to just anybody, but I don't want
to draw that.
No, you don't. But Kevin Nolan will make it so that the house is a character. And I'm not saying you can't do that. Obviously you can, but like he will love it. It's like,
well, that would be a challenge. I mean, and I do think sometimes, like I felt like when I worked with Warren and Moon Knight, like there was so much stuff in there. I'm like, how am I going to fucking draw this? And it's good sometimes to push outside of your comfort zone. So it works both ways. But
and now you can draw mushrooms out of with your eyes,
which I couldn't do beforehand. But no, case in point, like it would have been a challenge for me, but it would have been fun for him. And if it's fun for him, it's going to look better than a challenge.
Yeah. I do. That's what you're hoping. You're hoping like, I often tell people. I told you at the time, like when I started working with Kev wouldn't talk to me at first. And like, I was used to artists like writing back after getting the script or whatever. And I was like, I just like, is he messing with my head? Why won't he say anything? What's like, he doesn't actually answer me. And I don't know that he ever actually told me, but I always took it as like, after a while you get to like, when you're an artist, you work with the writers and you think, oh, here comes someone else who thinks I'm a magic monkey who just makes their pictures appear, blah, blah, blah. And you don't really trust them. You have to earn their trust. And I think that's what we were going through.
Well, I mean, it works both ways too. Like you said, you noticed like I was doing these kind of character moments. I didn't realize I was doing that. That's just how I was doing it, and I think that's something you always need to like. People should be considering more as they're working with other creators. That like, I think like you can get a job because you can draw certain stuff very well, but like everyone has their own voice, and I think you noticed a certain voice I had in my pages. I didn't realize because again, I'm doing them. You were seeing the trend and you rose towards that, even though I didn't even know that was a thing. But like, you can't know that unless you see the work first. You know, you don't just join together and everything works. You know,
at that point, I'm the only other person besides you staring at probably more than you staring at your own art. You know, because I'm then going over it again with the letter fixes, making sure usually cutting down my dialogue. It's like I wrote too much. I gotta knock it down. Blah blah blah. Or then it's like something like that middle panel you've got right there. It's like that really tells the story. You almost don't need any lettering at all there, if any. It's like you see the way he's got Boomerang dead to rights.
Yeah,
it's a good moment.
I like that last panel because I just liked drawing that little crack in the ground. Weirdly, that's my favorite thing.
Yeah, it is cool. It's a little kind of like Gendy Tartakovsky would do on Samurai Jack or something.
Yeah.
But Kev and I eventually got to where we communicated quite a bit, and then I remember at one part of the story he goes, "We're going to have the man thing learn how to talk, right?" And I was like, "Well, I briefly considered it, but I didn't know if it was overstepping or if I should do it." But then once he brought it up, I thought, yeah, that's exactly where this is going. And it's like, and if he didn't volunteer ideas too often, but when he did, I pretty much worked in all of them. It's like, yeah.
Well, if a good idea comes your way, like you can say no for your ego, or you can make the most of it,
Exactly. And you need to put your ego aside. Like whatever's best is best. And that's, and you know what? They're going to credit whoever they're going to credit. It's just like when people watch a movie they like, and they like some actor so much, they just assume they came up with their own dialogue. And it's like, no, that was a script they read from or whatever. Like, yes, they breathed life into it. They did a lot of things that someone else couldn't have done, but you don't have to assume they ad-libbed everything, Yeah.
Also, I think there's I can't think of a specific example. I think I do remember listening to stuff where no, that was actually exactly what was in the script. Like the director in question doesn't let actors improvise at all, and it seemed like the most improvisational thing. But I'm sure nobody ever knows how when you're on the other side of the process, when you're just watching the material, like the work, you're not supposed to know who did what necessarily, and if it's a collaboration, it's going to bleed through. It's a good and downside of working together. But
you may have the same problem I have with reading a lot of comics is too much about how they're made.
Yeah.
So if you start taking it apart as you're looking at it, it's awful. It's just like you can't enjoy it, and it may even be a pretty decent comic book, but you can see the seams and the stitching and the nails and all that are holding it together. When I get excited about a comic, it's usually because I just started reading it and I didn't do that.
Yeah. So it was good.
Nothing called attention to how it was made to me. I just this is a comic and I'm reading it. Okay, what's Tatiana saying here?
So she's saying, what advice would you give youngsters, writers, artists, letterers who wants to make comics besides reading and actually making comics? And then she realized she forgot.
And then took away the two things she knew I'd say.
Well, actually, that's because I would say that too. She's probably heard me. But then she realized she forgot to include colorists. So there you go, Tatiana. Huh? How does it feel?
Okay, I've got one for you. Before streaming came along and ruined everything, and we had to get movies by buying DVDs, they used to put the storyboards in as extras in a lot of the movies, especially if they were very visual oriented, you know, as opposed to just something that's character piece. And when I was working briefly in animation, I would go back and I'd look at the storyboards. And the interesting thing was to me, and it's like, and I'm not saying storyboards are that comparable to you know, finished print art, but storytelling wise, the artist is putting down a lot less than what you're getting when they you know, have a complete set and a camera and actors and all this sort of thing. You got to, but looking at that and looking at what the artist was doing when you got to do the side by side of those things in DVD extras, I really helped me think in terms of, wow, how the artist was telling the story and how they were picking what was important. And they couldn't do anything like tricky panels. They only have the one aperture screen shape to work with. That's just a kind of, what I'm really saying is reverse engineer everything. You know, even if it kind of, you know, maybe don't take apart some of your favorite things so you can't enjoy them anymore. But a lot of times you can go back and look at how a comic was made, think about the choices that they made to get to the point. Why did they pick that? Like, yours are great for this. You're making nothing but extremely deliberate choices here. That giant face, look at that.
Oh, that's just fun. It's like
drawn
drawn.
back, the smash, and then the big expression.
Yeah, that's probably my favorite. Well, also,
he's so mad because his nose got broken by Hyde.
But like, it's great. I mean, I don't remember if it was in the script, but again, it's 3 panels that just swapped it so that the vertical hits. I think that's what. Well, to the question, the reason I would say the thing to do is to make comics, because I think it is, like, we're linked into the other points, is you kind of need to find your voice.
Yeah.
You know, people talk about style all the time, you know, like if you've got a style like Scotty Young or a style like Sean Murphy, whatever it is, which I've said this before, so I'm sorry if someone said it before, but like those are very surface level ways of looking at how people draw. And you only really learn your voice by making the work, you know, so maybe I'm cheating by sticking with the same answer, but and learning what you hate and what you like you said, like while I was working on Thunderbolts, I got to do other stuff. Like I did Northlanders.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed doing that because it was a completely different type of comic.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned something about my voice that was different to doing like the more action focused superhero stuff, which bled back into my work. And I wouldn't like, you know, I love superhero stuff and I watch a lot of it, but like, it's not mainly what I watch. I kind of watch more miserable HBO dramas and stuff like that, you know? And it was nice to work on something that was tonally what I would choose to watch. Sorry, not choose to watch, but like that I just enjoy, you know, alongside the other stuff. And I think, you know, not that I didn't like Thunderbolts or anything, but knowing, like, it was cool to work on a Marvel book that wasn't. I mean, I don't ever want to do Avengers. That's just not. I don't think I'd enjoy working on that book. Thunderbolts is kind of like doing Avengers, but having all the fun stuff in it.
Yeah.
So, you know, or it was like the Suicide Squad of the Marvel universe, whatever you want to call it. Like, it definitely suited me, and I've been very lucky that all the stuff I've gotten to do generally, I've really enjoyed. You know, like, you know, Venom was the dark Spider-Man, or, you know, I think maybe Deadpool I thought I wasn't going to like, but I ended up it was actually a really emotional story, so I did.
Huh.
But knowing what you like, and I think the type of creator you'd like to be is worth keeping in mind. Like,
I wish I could dispel anybody of worrying about their style. The term you keep using, their voice, is so much more important.
Because it's inside out, whereas I think style is outside. And it's like trying to put somebody else's face on your face. You know?
Style is, well, some people say style is just simply showing your weaknesses. You know, like here's the things I can't do, so I do this instead. And that's, you know, that's a little crass. But really, style just manifests all on its own. You can't stop it. So don't even try about it. Worry about how you tell a story. And like getting you into the headspace and then doing, and yeah, you do have to do, I'm sorry, there's no other thing to tell people well, do extremely short stories for one thing. Because as Steve Lieber was telling some students we were talking to the other day at this Clark College, he said, okay, you may spend several months and you have the time and the energy to put into it, and you do a 32-page story. And it's like, but then when you're done with it and you're showing it around, you're the artist, you're this young artist who has done a 32-page story. But if instead you did 4 8-page stories, now you've drawn 4 stories. And like, I know it sounds like, hey, look, thanks for the basic math lesson. But no, it's different because there's something about getting to a conclusion and finishing something. It allows you to start doing those plateau jumps that you do as an artist. Your brain kind of re-gears and says, all right, we're starting a new thing now. Whereas if you're still telling the same story, you're trying to do your one long story, the thing that inevitably happens is you become a better artist, say like a dozen pages or so in, and then you can't stand looking at the beginning of the story anymore. So like try to do very short stories. One, you'll learn how as a storyteller, you'll learn you're not just the artist, you're the writer, really. And you're just writing drawings, and you will start to understand how to end a story, which is incredibly important. And actually for a while there, it seemed like nobody in comics did it very well because there were serial things that keep going. And, you know, it's like, so, okay, where's a nice conclusive end? I want to see an arc end in a definite and satisfying way. So that's the kind of thing. I was lucky when I started at Marvel. They put me on the Marvel Adventures books. And the whole point of those books were it wasn't supposed to look like it was for kids. It was supposed to look like the regular line with all the other heroes, but they were done in ones. I had to like have 22 pages to tell a story. And it really nailed me down on how to land a plane. You know, it's like I felt like I got really good at endings that way. And it, to me, when I'm watching a movie or reading a novel, if there's a really great ending, it forgives every other sin that came before it. You know, I am just on board. I was like, wow, that was worth my time.
You know, I've said the same thing before. I think if you're starting out, what you want is big projects and you want big things to like attach your name to and, you know, work your way up. But finishing is, I think, it's much easier if I draw 30 pages and then by the time I'm done, I can look over and go, okay, cool. But I think if I did 4 pages and a story ended, I'm going to have learned a lot more in 4 pages. And then when you start again, I think similarly, like when I was on Moon Knight, one of the reasons I think the work I did on that is probably some of my best was every month was a completely different challenge, and it forced me to step up. And Thunderbolts, similarly, it was like 3-issue arcs, so every new arc was a chance to step up. So if you're starting out, you can compress that process by doing short stories. And by the time you've got your 3rd short story done and you look back at the first, you will be so removed from any sense of like, you know, you're not going to be, oh, but I spent all day on that page. It's kind of like, you will be far more critical about yourself and apply it in a more kind of condensed way on what you're doing. Like, and I say it all the time. And I some of the times you feel bad that the advice you give is the same over and over again because it's just so
well. It's universal. It's like I'm sorry, you're not all that individual that I can't form different things for each of you, but it's a universal truth. You know, you will make those artistic leaps with each project more so than if you just stay on one thing the whole time. And again,
which is tough because a lot of people, you know, like the attention economy is very short. It's gotten shorter and shorter and shorter, and it's tough to, you know, make a name for yourself and all that. But like it's I mean, being good isn't the thing. I mean, I'd love if being the best artist in the world is what made you successful. Like, it's not. It's definitely a factor, but you and I know amazing guys who, you know, never took off. We know guys who are terrible who completely took off. It's. I mean, I would say that's great advice for like just being a good artist. I mean, there's other things you could say like, I don't know, not just calm down online, or there's all these little bits of advice you could give, but ultimately all you can really do is talk about the work and what's going to get you to a good place.
Okay, like I will say a few just general art practices, like once you've roughed out a panel, look at it and see if you haven't put a bunch of superfluous lines in there and cut those out. Too many lines. Stop giving down shots. This is the one I say to everybody. Obviously, there's always a place where you're going to need it. Like I actually called for one in that earlier script page where it's like Luke is looking down at the guy playing guitar, and it's not. But I'm not calling for a bird's eye view. I'm not calling for the security cam view of an area, which for some reason for a while I was seeing in everybody's stuff, and I was like, why are you all picking this? Is everyone looking at security footage to figure out?
It probably was.
Yeah. It's like, stop doing this. One, all you do is make a lot of work for yourself. Now you got to draw the ground or the tile work that I don't want to see. Bring the camera down. A lot of times a scene works better if you think of, and I'm sorry to keep using camera as a reference, but you know what I mean by it. Think of it as a character itself that's among the other characters. So like if you're showing a party, I really don't want to see a view from the ceiling of like, oh, there's a party. That doesn't make me feel like I'm seeing this big ball. You're literally just giving me the basic information. But if you were down there and then suddenly there's interesting things happening, like someone clearly making advances to another person on a couch that they don't like, someone carrying a drink and someone left their watch on a tray, all kinds of stuff that would be more at your eye level or at a seated level that just is way interesting. And also then you get something more like upshots, which it's just going to be a lot faster and more interesting to draw. So yeah, stay away from down shots. Don't forget things can be in silhouette once in a while, not all the time. Some people will just like, hey, I'm like Toth, and they'll just do like, you know what? Toth actually did not do that. I'm sorry. He drew a lot more than you think he did. But everybody remembers cool silhouettes. What are some other just little, do try to put some, I know this is a ridiculous little note I give people, like throw an animal in there, but remember that in a city, a pigeon will fly by. It's something about it that keeps it from being like, this was my SketchUp model that I then inked, like, no, there's life. It's Will Eisner. There's papers blowing around, there's wind, there's weather, put weather in it, have it rain once in a while. It can't be all sunny days. Have it be foggy. We're in London when Dec and I did the Jack the Ripper storyline with Hyde, and I got to say like, oh, make one of those giant walls of fog coming down the Thames, and it's like, I didn't have to tell him twice. He knew what to do.
Yeah, no, that was fun. Like that made it way more fun. Like, I think you were always really good for like having little side things and little side details. I don't think it's probably a weakness of mine, but it was always a little bit more fun to draw. It's weird, the small. I think it was a lot of Boomerang stuff made a lot of the scenes more fun to draw. I think he was like, there's a scene where he's trying to talk to Moonstone and she's like not having it, or there's a lot of small little. It's weird how the small little things end up like kind of nourishing you as you're doing the bigger stuff. I found actually that was really good fun.
And that's the stuff Jack Kirby was so good at. Like, he would put real life things going on with these characters, and later on you can't remember much about whether they were fighting a nihilist or not, but you remember some horsing around in the kitchen or some little tiny detail of something. And then even if Stan would come in and change things with the dialogue so it obscured what was happening totally. I always complain about this one panel where they first meet Lockjaw, and Kirby has clearly drawn a big bowl of water like anybody would give a dog. It's a dog. and like, because he put the little reflection in there, like when you're drawing water. And then Stan lettered it saying that they're pouring milk in the thing, and then the colorist had to color it as milk. And I'm like, this is stupid. No, people don't give a dog milk. Stan, have you ever met a dog? You know, and that's one. That's how you know Kirby was actually writing the thing, and Stan was just dialoguing it. But you know, it's like there's little things not adding up. But like Kirby was like a real person who went outside once in a while somehow, even though drawing 3 pages a day.
Yeah.
I love that opening shot of them zooming across the sky.
Yeah, that was fun. But again, like I love that stuff. But what is it? It's just some rocks, black with the 2 lines. Like, but I find again that's the that immediate. I'll go to an immediate shot that is again economical. But like I think it's just I don't know. It's just how my brain works sometimes. Like but yeah,
you
not
pulled
really
in
sure.
closer and closer. You went far away. You came in mid shot, and then you worked all the way up to that close up of the 2, and you got a thunderbolt in there. That's good thinking.
Always thinking, always ahead. I do want to. Someone earlier said something nice. Where like, I love this Thunderbolts run with all my heart. It's awesome to hear you both of you discussing it after all these years.
Thank
it
you.
is because we didn't talk. We talked while we were working together, but we didn't really talk about the book necessarily, or what was happening or anything like that. You know, we just I just enjoyed the project. Well, it was a little bit different because I was starting out, so I was just basically happy to be there and just wanted to please you, you know. But I do like I fondly remember working on that book. Like
yeah, it felt like we were getting away with something. It was it was one of those like, oh, we're getting to like entertain ourselves. Anytime you get, again, like you said before, anytime you get to that where the creators are clearly like into it, like that enthusiasm comes through in Alligator. Thank you, because you know that's what we want. We want people to remember it fondly. You know,
because a lot of stuff was coming out at the time. You know, like Fear itself, and I'm trying to remember what else. Like I quite liked a lot of the Marvel Now stuff when I was doing Moon Knight and everything. But like I feel like there's not a lot of books where I feel like the creators are really having fun. You know?
Yeah, as a quote pops in my head from that time. I don't know if you remember. I'm sure you remember his art because you remember artists very well. But Marko Drjevic was doing
covers, wasn't he?
He was doing covers, and he was doing covers for the X-Men First Class book I was writing.
Mm-hmm.
And I specifically remember one. You know, I would keep trying to give stuff again that I knew he would like, because like he doesn't want to just do an action thing. And like there was one where I got to have Angel and Scarlet Witch possibly interested in each other, and I said, can we do this like a romance book, you know, just like it's a straight romance novel? And you could tell he loved doing that. He had all these flower petals falling through and white space in the back, and just focused on them. And it was like, it's the one your eye goes to every time when you're looking at a row of the covers of that book. It's like, this is great. And it's like, but you know, if you ask the company, they'll ask for an evergreen cover that's always like, you know, it's the character flying, blah, blah, blah. It's like, you've seen it a million times. It's not interesting. But I remember Drjevic, when he seemed to walk away from comics, which I guess he did because I haven't seen him since.
I think he set up some like design company, and was he Croatian or I can't remember.
Yeah, and
I think he set up his own video game company or something like that. So I heard anyway. I could be
good
for
him.
That.
It seemed like his parting words were something like, "I'm sick of drawing people in superhero costumes crying," and then like, I'm sorry, or it was something like that, or I'm tired of drawing people dressed in costumes being sad. And it's like, yeah, I get it. You know, it's like, why are we're not leaning into the strengths of it? We're like, yeah, but what if these people in these ridiculous, outlandish costumes were kind of down? You know,
I mean, look, I'm guilty as anybody for like in all the moody stuff, but I think like you know, and I'm not what I say is like you know, is anybody having fun? It's not necessarily criticism of like the companies as such. Like I think maybe everyone's just so worried about the bottom line. Like it was easy to take chances when you know, we were all getting paid a page rate.
Yeah.
You know, the book, as long as the book hit the printer and the sales were at a certain amount, we were okay, and we were left alone. So you could do weird. I mean, there's a lot of weird stuff in that arc, like in that run that's like totally ridiculous and fun and silly. It didn't take itself too seriously, and I think there was a little bit of security at the time where, like, if we were what the book was selling at the time, any book selling that amount now,
it was doing well. It was doing
not compared to, like, you know, the big books, but it was solid, you know.
Yeah, it was. Well, I often will say this. I mean, I'm no businessman or tell people how to run a company, but I've often thought it's a mistake on the part of the bigger companies to ignore the mid list the way they do. They put everything into like 2 or 3 books, and everything else is just the little unfed children. And it's like, you know, when you had a book like, it's like when I was working on Aquaman, we were in the 40s, good, solid place to be. And generally that's where Aquaman's about as good as he's going to do. You know, I mean, for a hero who's in the water, that's good. I loved working on that book. And for a while, like, DC was going through a bunch of shifting around, and we didn't have like one editor for 2 months at a time. You know, it just kept like, so it was all on me and Paul Pelletier. And somebody would get handed the book, and I'd just say, "Oh, we're fine. Don't worry. Here's what's going on. Paul knows what's going on." And Paul and I were having a great time for that same reason. Like, we weren't worried about our jobs for 5 minutes. We were able to just tell the stories, and we should have had a longer run. But then the editor who came on after, you know, didn't like that he didn't get to pick the team. And it's like, look, man, when your car is running and it's doing great, don't stop it and change everything and try to do something else. Like, stick with it. Let it go. Like, this is a magical thing in comics. And now people understand that. Like, something's working, do not break it. Let it keep rolling.
Because that's it. If you mess with it, it breaks, and then it's very hard to make something work like that again. You know?
And people forget, like, they always want to go, I'm going to reinvent this character. Like, Alan Moore rewrote Swamp Thing's origin, not because he wanted to do that, is because Swamp Thing had the same origin as Man Thing and the Heap. And, you know, it was the exact same thing. He was trying to, and it wasn't doing particularly well. So it needed that sort of infusion. You don't go mess with someone where it was already working. Spider-Man's origin already works as is. You don't have to keep adding to it or changing it or anything like that, you know?
Yeah. If something's working, it doesn't need to be fixed. If something isn't working, fine, fix it. That's fine. Yeah. But like a healthy book that's selling solid, I think the thing is consistent. If you're selling a consistent sales on a book, that's worth its weight in gold, because you can put loads of money into a new one, and then you know, the attrition happens. If something's solid, I think I was talking to I won't say his name just in case, because it's not my business, but I was doing a book at Boom, and they were saying that, like, the numbers, like, it loses money on issues, but it's solid, like, it stays the same. So then the trades, which they've done loads of ever since, it's been a huge success. But, like, not that it was like losing crazy money, but it was just losing a little bit. But because it didn't go down, because it stayed the same, they were able to keep going and then make loads and loads down the line. And it's really, like, we did a Time Before Time, and we just wrapped it up. I think the last issue's out next week. But you know, the sales went down a good bit at the beginning, but they kind of, I would have liked them to have kind of like leveled out earlier, would have been better, but they did level out, and you know, that gave us a little bit of breathing room to kind of get to the end of the story that we'd like to.
Good.
It's hard to do, you know, very hard to do.
Nothing makes me sadder than when, you know, like, as I try to explain to people, it's not like comics are, the comics going along and then it's canceled. It's like, no, it's always, especially at Marvel, it's only approved for 5 issues at a time. It's just simply not renewed. It's not really the same thing as canceling. It's like, they're like, this, and if they see it drip below a certain number, they stop it and they move on to the next thing so that they can start a new number 1. And, like, you know, when I was doing a run on the Hulk with the Red Hulk as the main character, I only wanted to do 3 more issues, and I didn't get to do them. But then we got to do a fun thing of focusing on the Red She-Hulk, which was Betty, doing that for a year, and I really enjoyed that because I got to work with Carlo Pagulayan, who's I had worked with a lot, and I think he's a terrific artist. Now he's doing some Superman thing at DC, and yeah, it's like a lot of times, like, I don't like when people say it looks like you had to wrap it up, and like I don't want people to be able to tell that I had to wrap it up.
Sure, yeah.
But like you say, is when you've got something that's selling nice, consistent numbers, and it's enough to keep everybody paid, like keep that going forever. That's a mid list. That's a solid thing. It's like
that greases the wheels for other stuff to.
It does.
It keeps,
it keeps people coming back into shops or wherever they get their books, and then they might try something else that you want them to try, or then you might have a chance where some books like that go along and suddenly have a breakout character everybody likes, and then there you've begat something new, so there's no reason to do that and foist, no, we only need 100,000 sellers. It's like there's just not that many of them. Whereas if you had like 15 good mid-list books, like you can count on that, and you know what you're going to make for the year.
It also means you have more to, like, if you want Trad Moore to do another amazing book or whatever, he's able to be paid if the company's solid. If you've got all these books making in a certain amount of money every month, and everything's covered, then that gives you. I think it was I read that like so many novels lose money, but Stephen King at that company makes so much that they can take a chance on all these new authors. It was very sobering to learn that. Like, you think if people are making books that they're all making money, and are like, no, a lot of publishers lose money because they pay the writers, and they'll see what happens. But the only reason they can do that is because Stephen King sells millions and millions and millions.
Yeah, it's like stay alive forever, Stephen King. Because we need you. And it was like when I first got DC work as an artist in the 90s, it was on a couple of issues of Wonder Woman, and that at the time always sold like 40,000 itself. And it didn't matter who you put on it, it sold the same. So it was the perfect book for them to bring in new artists and try them out for a little bit, or a little arc or a couple stories here and there. And so I was able to get in and do my drawing, and I think I annoyed the editor too much because I inked one section that I just really want to ink this. I was not supposed to do that. He's mad. He made me redraw it and have someone else ink it. But it's like, oh well, I was kind of like you. I was ambitious, and and I was going to, even though I was happy for my chance, I was still probably just throwing my elbows all over the place, and because
it's a delicate balance. Because you want people to care, but you want to. Like, when I was in Thunderbolts, I was very much like good boy at Marvel. I was like, whatever you say, you got it. Except for one issue.
We liked you better then. You were great.
Now I've got notions, so but I think there was one. I think I drew the line one time. Thunderbolts. I was given like 2 weeks to draw an issue, and I just couldn't do it. And that was where I had to learn to say no, just because it would have been. As much as I wish I had drawn that moment where it was like, it's a giant-sized man thing. Like, it killed me to not draw that, but I just wasn't given the time to do it. So
it was and I'm trying to figure out. It wasn't my fault. I know that. It was they had shoehorned in something with the event, and so it.
No, somebody was sitting on. I know somebody was sitting on the script, which was more annoying because.
Oh, that is bad.
Yeah. But it was those moments where you're like, okay, well, you got to draw a line and go, I can't do that. And I noticed when I advocated for myself a bit more, things went better. And, but that can go badly too. Editors might not like that, on Alien.
You got to try. You got to let them know that you are not a little part to be aimed around. I am not a gun. Like the Iron Giant, you got to let them know, like, I am a real person, and you need to treat me slightly better. Just
yeah,
not
yeah,
to,
like I noticed. Yeah, you got to be careful. If you push too much, then you're in trouble. But like you said, having fun with stuff. On Alien, the second arc, there wasn't enough time for Andrea to draw all the issues, so we needed like another story. So I like the fun thing was like, well, I could just write like a flashback story, and I was finishing Old Dog, so I'm like, I could draw it, and I did.
Yeah.
And I drew and colored it, and then Andrea got to do a cover, and there was no colorist at the time, so I was like, I could color it, and that was really fun. Like, it was really, really fun for me as the writer to be coloring the cover of the artist. Like, I don't want to do that all the time, but like, it is actually really cool to just play
it's
around
cool.
sometimes.
I think it's good for you. Yeah, it gets you in a different headspace, and yeah, you like remember like, oh yeah, my role can move around on this book. That's one thing I did say in one of those how do you break into comics panels one time, to go back to the question about like what other things do you tell young artists. You almost always get your big break from someone else failing. It's it's like one of those apartment houses you got to wait for someone to die to get into, but it's true, like eventually someone else is going to fumble, they're being worked to death, they're not getting any breaks or whatever, and then suddenly that's when they're going to be open to, oh, who is this new person, and that's when you get
need it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like you want to think like, oh, like someone does a project. I'm clearly the first person they went to. You're like, actually, probably third. The person they really wanted probably couldn't, was too busy.
Oh, I love talking to people and finding out that they passed on the thing that I ended up on. That's my favorite conversation to happen. Or and to get to the subject of bake-offs, God, I hate them. And for those who don't know the term, sometimes editorial will send out, they'll reach out to a bunch of different writers and artists and want to hear your takes on like, what would you do for this? And you're not being paid for this most of the time. And, and then they'll sit there, and this is kind of like what I was talking about with make the letterer do the whole thing, and then you start thinking about what should change. Then they're sitting there just kind of comparing your takes and seeing which one interests them and might go along with the company. And it's like, I'm sorry, that is complete bullshit. Do not do that. You're wasting people's time. Like, because people obviously get excited thinking, oh, I might get a chance to, draw this character or write this character. And now I'm going to spend a week of my time showing them what I can do, that I'm not getting paid, and you don't even know that you're up against all these other creators. I'm sorry, like if I ever find out, I have been kind of a jerk to people once I found that out. Like, I wouldn't have done it if I'd known it was a bake-off. But I've also at the same time been, okay, I really need work. I'm pretty sure the way this letter was written, this is a bake-off. I just need to win this bake-off. And that's the way the cookie crumbles. You're going to like sometimes like, okay, I'm not in the 900-pound gorilla position right here, and I need work to keep power coming into this house. And so all the time need to understand that when you tend to think long form, it's hard to think in terms of, I'm going to say something on a page that's going to get everybody super excited here.
I haven't been in that position, but I think it's like, well, one,
you will be. Yeah.
I guess so. But like I haven't written as much as you, clearly, but also because a lot of it's generally tied to art, so like I'm not going to say yes to something. It might be like, I don't have time to draw it, and therefore they're not interested, or it might be a thing where they're trying to talk me into, like, there's a leverage there that I would have,
right?
That like it's just purely on the writing point I wouldn't have. But I do have the problem with like pitches and stuff that like I only have so much brain span, and I can, like, I'm pitching something at the moment, and I think it's happening. And I'd say it's probably, I was talking to another writer who said, like, oh, I like put it all in there, like everything's in there. I put every single detail, and like just out of economy, I'm like, I'm going to put in like the bones of it, and if it goes further, then I'll like actually have to do it tonight. I've got to work on something a bit more, but I only have so much time, so and I don't want to waste it because I've other stuff to do. So, you know, if you like the bones of it, great, and if not, then that's fine. Like, you know, I'm not, but yeah, but it's different. I think when it's tied to art, people will respect the time to draw more than the time to write. I'd say people don't really respect that at all. Like, they don't think how long it's going to take to come up with something that's interesting, you know.
No, because it looks like you're doing nothing.
yeah. Which in some ways works because you're looking out a window half the time. Like, but but yeah, no, that hasn't happened to me. But I mean, I haven't written like anything near you have, and I'm sure you're right. I'm sure it would. But I do know, like, I've gotten jobs. Sorry, no, I don't know. Art-wise, I know I'm sure I've gotten jobs because I was the third on the list. I just haven't been told. Because I've seen stuff I've turned down go to other people who actually are bigger than me sometimes. So I don't know how it works. That's always nice because I'll take it as a compliment. You know, like, oh my God, they got him. Jesus, they should have asked him first.
Yeah.
but that's it. It's like you'd like to think you're the person that everyone's going to, but really, like, you've no idea. Like you said, somebody else probably took a job. I think that happened one time. I got a job and it was a short notice, and my thinking was they probably asked somebody else, and then I did 3 pages in one day. I could do that every day for the rest of my life.
I'll just do that day over and over again.
And all of a sudden you're wondering why you did a half a page in a day. You're like, but I did 3. No, yes.
Yeah. It's like you don't always have that kind of magical focus, and that's what it is. It really takes the focus more than the time. And sometimes, like, when you are in that position, it really helps if you just keep talking to the person. Like, one, they've got an agenda. There's something they're hoping you'll do, and try to get that out of them. You know, try to get them to fess up and admit what it is they want the book to be. Like, don't make me guess what you want it is. Just tell me, like, oh, we were hoping this would be our Hellboy. I can't remember
what it was. It might be a Simpsons bit. Generally, probably is with my brain, but it's something like
it's always a Simpsons bit with you.
I know, and it's like, what would you like? What would you like? I can't remember what it's from, but like, it's basically what it is. So what do you want to do? It's like, well, what do you like? That's what I'll do. Jeff, I'll talk all night. Give the chance. It's been like 2 hours, so
you got to go to sleep. You've got deadlines.
Too. But I want to ask, what are you working on at the moment? Do you have stuff coming out soon? I know. Well, so Tracker was this Night of the Realms? Sorry, I can't remember the
like Blighter.
Blighter.
I just for people who were part of the Kickstarter, there's only a few left that I've actually got to go up Wednesday to the warehouse and sign, so they can go out. But that's what Drew Moss and I did with Rosh Kirchanil coloring and Ed Dukeshire lettering, and our sometimes common net editor Nate Cosby edited it. Anyway, it's about a tiger man hunting monsters, and that's a graphic novel that's coming. It's now out, and probably I'll look for a larger publisher to do another version of it so that it can go wider than it did. Because it's great to have 900 fans, but I feel like more people could read it.
It's a tough thing with the Kickstarter because, like, Kickstarters are like a niche. There is a Kickstarter audience, and there's like a people who read comics from shops audience.
And they really actually don't cross over as much as you would think.
That's it. Yeah, that's true. I didn't know that really when I was starting out, but like there is some crossover, but it's not that large. So has it been a good experience for you?
Yeah, it's fine. It was it took me twice as long to get to this point as I wanted it to, but considering that we were working with everybody without, like, we weren't asking anyone to like drop paying work they had, because we were paying from the Kickstarter, but we couldn't pay big rates, like, to me, I was just going to, whatever the Kickstarter made, I was just going to keep putting that into everybody's rate. If it had gone 3 times as much, Drew would have made a big pile of money, and it would have been great. But Drew did what he committed to, and he did a great job of it. But we couldn't. If he suddenly got a little job here and there that paid well, I couldn't say no, sorry. It's like, no, do your thing. We'll get it done. Everybody understands. It's like, it's Kickstarted. They're just happy we're actually coming out with it. I'm sorry. I've Kickstarted things years ago, and I've seen no sign of them, but I'm not crying about it, am I? Whereas you,
I think you roll the dice with everything, really. Like, I would say most things I've backed, I've gotten them, but I mean, it depends who.
I've gotten most of the things I've ordered, but we didn't have the luxury of having the thing half done ahead of time, and that's what I would rather have done, and what I would do the next time I do it. It's like, get pretty deep into something so I can say, oh, don't worry, I'm already past the hard part on this. Like, go ahead, look at all these little pages, too small for you to make out. Also, right now, I'm doing Negaduck from the Darkwing Duck universe for Dynamite. That's a fun one that a lot of people who watch TV in the 90s will, I think, enjoy. And you can give it to kids, even if they didn't watch it. It's on Disney Plus. So, and this entire month, the month of December, it's next week. I'm doing with Michelle Bandini, Silent Night with a K. It's the DC, the DC Christmas event. So every week, it's a 4-issue series. You get to see Batman and find out that he knew Santa Claus, and that they've got to take on the Krampus for some reason. And this is a very fun story, and really a hard thing to pull off because, like, as you well know, like the major printers that Marvel and DC use always need all their stuff in really early at the year's end. So you suddenly get a collapsed deadline schedule that it's not as much time as you might be used to having. So we had that, plus we had to get 4 issues of a thing to all ship each week. And but I started nice and early. Anyway, I'm really proud of this.
So it's all coming out. It's coming out each week of December.
Yeah.
Wow, that's class.
Yeah, that'll be kind of interesting to walk in and there's a new book out every week. That'll be
really cool.
Yeah, I think it was a great idea. Get them as stocking stuffers. Stuff them in stockings. And you get to find out what different heroes wrote to Santa about when they were kids.
Oh, that's class, man.
Or Father Christmas, whatever you call him.
Yeah. I knew the project. I knew the project. I didn't know it was coming out once a week. That's kind of a nice thing to run. It sounds like it's a lot of work getting it ready for Christmas, though. With the, you said, without the
it got a little hairy there, and after it comes out, I'll tell you some things that had to be changed that were pretty funny. But it turned out great. It's I'm very happy with it.
Is Michelle Bandini? That's Italian artist.
Yeah,
I can't remember. It looks amazing. The stuff I've seen looks fantastic.
He's terrific.
That's great. That's great, man. And and Negaduck's right up your alley too. No, that's great.
Yeah.
And
there's something I can't.
Is Negaduck a
I wanted to talk
series,
about Thundercats, but
Oh, I mean, it's handy to get Blighter now because I can go there's a cat dude. I can see it.
Yeah, I know. So you see, now I feel like we were just a warm up for you guys to do Thundercats.
Yeah, so I appreciate that. Thank you very much. But I know I love. I mean, it's still it's had to come together very fast. So I'm just it was announced in New York, and then everybody was like, "Oh my god!" I didn't realize so many people would care about it. I just thought it'd be fun.
Just and I didn't about the Darkwing stuff until I sat up at the Rose City Comic-Con in Portland, and people would just slam on the brakes walking by when they would see, the duck. I was and they were suddenly very interested, and I was like, oh man, I should have known this was going to be big. But Thundercats, I think I would have predicted that reaction because that one's been boiling in fan circles for years with people wanting some kind of
I hadn't really thought about it, but yeah, no, it makes sense. Like, you know, there's some like, well, also it seems weird. It seems a lot of IP stuff is coming back in a big way. Like Turtle seems to be on fire, and the Transformer stuff seems to be on fire. So you know, it makes sense. That Nate's a sharp one. I'll give him that. But I just thought, oh, that would be cool. But I hadn't realized there hadn't been Thundercats comics in years and years, and it's a nice opportunity to kind of do something new that's nostalgic, that isn't, you know, not just the same as before, and not doing something too wildly different. So and like Drew was attached very soon after I was, so I was really happy because I just think he's fantastic.
He's perfect for it.
I'm hoping this will be the book that just blows him up, because he more deserves it, you know.
Oh, he really does. I think it will be. And then I hope, you know, then I can sell Blighter on the heels of Drew blowing up on that.
That's it. It all works out. I mean, yeah, why not? Of course.
Oh, he does. But I saw a lot of his art, like secretly a while back, and I was like, oh man, this is going to be well met. People are going to love this.
Oh yeah, no, I'm excited. Like, yeah, just try not to think about it too much, because I'm not. Yeah, I got a bit overwhelmed.
Well, you try not to think about anything too much.
Yes, good point.
Because you have no control over whether something's going to be a success or not. All you can do is please yourself, and that's
at the very least, I'm getting to do some fun. I just did a cover for issue 2, and
good.
It felt like I was drawing X-Men or something in the 90s. You know, like it put me back in that frame of mind. Like I said earlier on, with some Thundercat or Thunderbolts. The right Thunder, right? I've also learned how to pronounce Thunder better, because when I was working with Thunderbolts with the EYs, I kept saying Thunderbolts, and everybody thought I had a speech impediment. But
no, we knew.
So it's it's Thundercats. But no, it's fun. Like, it is fun. Like but I'm dying to see pages come back now. That's when I know it's real, you know.
And then when you go into shops and you get into those back issues where everything's purely alphabetized, you will follow you, because Thundercats will come right after Thunderbolts.
Nicely done.
And I was like, wow, that actually works out nicely.
I have a whole section of every comic shop. That's me. Iron Man. I can't believe we're talking for 2.5 hours, but at the same time, I'm glad to talk for 2.5 hours, man.
Well, this is a good use of people's time. Listen to me and Deck talk. Yeah,
it's more interesting than I don't know whatever's happening on YouTube or TikTok or God knows what.
You can go watch somebody or have a reaction to an old song, I guess. I don't know, or you can listen to us talk about our problems.
Well, I'm sure everyone's learned something, but this has been great, man. Like, this is just great to just catch up and talk to you about all this stuff. That's actually why I thought I would do this, because even at shows, I find going to shows again, you just end up like having like chats about like how's things, and you know, how's wife and kids and all that, like talking like people. You don't talk about the work that much, I find, anymore. So it's nice to do this. So thanks.
It forces us to talk about process, which we're both very big into. And and I like the other ones you've done. It's like, I love hearing people talk about how they work, and you can only do that. I'm sorry, interviewers, but you can only really do it with another creator. That's like, they're going to bring up the subjects that you get things. It's not just a question answer. You know, it's like it's like the Truffaut Hitchcock book, where, you know, it's like, you know, Truffaut's made a ton of movies at that point, and then he's getting to meet with Alfred Hitchcock and have a dialogue with him. I used to read that book all the time. It's so good.
Well, even like the you know, like I did a process book for I'm doing a process book for Old Dog. I love all the process stuff. And I loved those Modern Masters books. Did, you know, like I remember, like, you know, after work, you know, or college or whatever, I'd scour these things for any little gems of like little anecdote here or a lesson there, and like we're actually in a weird. There's so much of that stuff available now, you know. It's amazing. Although I don't know. I don't see a lot of it in this kind of context, I guess. But and I don't know how much of an interviewer I am, because I end up talking over everybody because I can't shut up. but it's
Well,
fun for me. And
it means you're into the topic, and that's what that's what you like. If you fell asleep, I'd feel bad.
Yeah. Well, the main thing is to make it all about me. That's the important thing.
Your show.
Yeah. But I'll leave you off, man. Thanks a million. And
Great.
if you want to send me some links, if there's any links you want me to, I can put in the description. I can edit afterwards.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
My pleasure, man. It was great talking to you, man.
Good to see you.
I'll see you guys.